All right. Rex and Rev. Re-examination show here with Rev Russ at some point. So we are trying to figure out how to do this rating thing. This is the first time that's ever happened to me. In the meantime, let's see. Maybe I should get out of this tab. So I wanted to check out a few of these videos. Rev Russ and I. Now he's never seen this before. I'm gonna wait till he comes up. Let's see. So this is a guy named Zeb Boykin, and I wanted to review one of his videos because we had that debate recently. Me and JS Urban Adventures, and who's the other guy? Oh, that's right, Mo Rebuttal, our good friend Mo Rebuttal. It's a three-way debate off of Abe Dinkus's channel, and we were going to see exactly how we parse the idea of does race exist and does racism exist. And I think this video in particular kind of fits the bill for some of those things. But I was going to wait until Rev came, but I might just kick this off right now while these things are going on. Give me a second.
We are here with Mr. Michael Spangler. He's an author. He's a pastor, Piedmont Presbyterian.
How is this possible?
You don't find yourself in a pasta making class.
Okay, great. Wait, were you even listening?
This is kind of crazy.
You haven't taken a single note this entire meeting?
I'm actually listening better than I ever have.
There we go. There we go. Now I can hear it.
My screen. Do you see this? Everything we're saying is being transcribed in real time.
Welcome to Wix Harmony. Take the speed of AI and pixel level control.
Hello all.
To go from words into a full website that's entirely yours to shape.
We are here.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Zeb Boykin is a guy who's into race, and he was on one of Sarah Tomato's panels at some point. So I wanted to hit up what he was saying here as far as race realism. Hopefully Rev Russ is going to drop by at some point. He says he is on his way. So in the meantime, I'm just going to get us warmed up here. Un momento.
Here with Mr. Michael Spangler. He's an author. He's a pastor, Piedmont Presbyterian Church, and he's written a book. It's going to come out when?
Probably within a month. I've got my
Christian Race Realism
copy here.
Obviously, Christian Race Realism is a little bit of a provocative title to the.
No, it says touch grass, but I mean, grass is also euphemistic for pot. And yeah, I get it there on the lawn. I don't know why this man is not wearing socks. That has to be yet unfolded, but here he is.
The normal masses out there. I know I'm kind of caught in a little bubble on Twitter, and I think a lot of people are, but that bubble is growing rapidly. With you host the Old Past podcast. You have Stephen Wolf, who has his Lone Bulwark podcast. You have Stone Choir. You have a lot of these other significantly more, you could call it right, you could call it Christian, you could call it traditional, masculine, whatever you will. I believe there is a pursuit of truth among these podcasts, these people, these hosts, everyone that's kind of pushing this narrative to kind of get back to where we used to be. And let's say, I don't know, 1400 Britain, right? This is what we're kind of chasing after, is this idea where we can marry church and state to further the kingdom of God. Is that kind of where you're at with this?
I'd say so in a broad sense. I think Christian nationalism is a good term for how I see the intersection between spirituality and politics. And I'm glad to be a part of that movement.
Okay, so we're diving into race realism. I guess it's a more specific term that people can take
like racism
it as broad, but everyone understands what race is, whether they want to deny it or not.
What is it then? Lay it out for me. What exactly is it? Because the last argument I heard for it was that people inherit traits from their parents.
Everybody sees with their eyes, white, black.
Okay, so phenotype is what he's getting at. That race is phenotype. Okay, so does that mean that there's some ontological definition of your personhood that is deterministic from your genetics, that it has value in any real way, that prescribes you to think a certain way, live a certain way, treat people a certain way? That's what I want to know.
All of these things. And those words do carry some baggage with them. Nobody denies that. But there's obvious differences across the board. What
Yes, genetics bear differences. So what do you do with that is the question. How do you think of a person after the fact is the question.
do you say to someone that says, you're a supremacist? Like, how does that conversation carry out?
Well, I have to know who I'm talking to. If it's a friend, or if it's someone.
Hold up. So some people you'll say yes, you're a supremacist, and some people you'll say no, you're not a supremacist. Okay, so hold up. Is he talking about like, oh, am I talking to a Fed? Like, what considerations do you have to put into whether you say the truth or not? I mean, obviously you're putting this on YouTube, so it's not like they can't go back and hear your words. You're with a friend now. Would you not say with a compadre what you would say on YouTube, and therefore what you would say to the next person you're talking to, because they can just look it up anyway?
That's just clearly being dismissive. I could just say, sure, I am. And the reason for saying something like that is it's useful to just make a simple recognition that there is such thing as supremacy.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back because the classic verse, and these kind of people always dismiss it, but the classic verse to go over this would be, I believe it's Galatians 3:28. Now, the book of Galatians was written by Paul to the church at Galatia. And you want to talk about how it's not the fact that you have to go and do the old laws from the Old Testament. That's not what's going on here. There were people called Judaizers in the Church of Galatia who wanted to persuade the Christians there that they had to do the works and the law of the Old Testament that were meant to be a shadow, a type and shadow, an illustration setting forth into when Christ would come. And classic verse is Galatians 3:28, where Paul says, there is neither Greek nor Jew, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you're all one in Jesus Christ. And there is another one where a Scythian, where it talks about the Scythian. Colossians 3:11. Where there is neither Greek nor Jew, Colossians 3:11, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. So I wish I had. Now that goes back to my fourth debate with Andrew, but that has not been published yet. Hoping to see that soon.
Even before we get to the concept of race, God has, in many ways, put some men above others in his providence.
Here's the difference. He's not, when God puts somebody in prominence, he doesn't put somebody in prominence who is that way because people at large are that way. Rev Russ, welcome to the program. From your rustic studio somewhere in a log cabin in rural Canada. Not really, but...
Well, I didn't want to go too flashy because, I'm not a gamer. I didn't want to do the whole modern look. I'm really simple. So
you should do your
I figured I'd
entire
just go
house
as
in
simple as possible with
RGB.
the look.
Just flashing all the colors around all the time. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
See, I got a keyboard, but I keep it solid color.
Oh, okay. I got a keyboard, but I did this whole thing. I went halfway. It's not animated or anything, but at least it's lit up. All right. I'm going to back this up for you for your quote unquote benefit. So this guy named Zeb Boykin, and I'm gonna let you listen to the first couple minutes, and you let me know when you want me to stop.
We are here with Mr. Michael Spangler. He's an author. He's a pastor, Piedmont Presbyterian Church, and he's written a book. It's going to come out when?
Probably within a month. I've got my
Christian Race Realism
copy here.
Obviously.
Okay.
Hey,
So
Rios, what was the name of that Presbyterian church?
Piedmont, which I wonder if that's in the Atlanta area.
See if he's PCA or PCUSA.
I'm gonna think
Piedmont. Piedmont.
South Carolina.
Piedmont.
Yikes. Yeah, somewhere out in South Carolina.
Review on Facebook. It's a 5-star, it looks like.
Yeah, there's 6 5-star reviews,
Okay.
which mean absolutely nothing to me.
Yeah. Can you pop the link to that? Is there like a backstage chat here?
Yeah, I think there is.
'Cause I want to see like what presbytery they're aligned with.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And this is the guy who says that true Christians can worship Satan and still be saved.
No, did you want to do that one instead? We can do that one instead. This is the guy who's doing Christian race realism. I was just putting
which
something
one's
together.
this one?
This one was dang it.
Christian race realism.
Oh, I think I put that in the public chat. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know. Maybe there isn't a private chat. Maybe I should just put it on Discord. Yeah, it's out there now.
Yeah, that's fine too.
This was not meant to be some kind of like targeting scheme or anything like that. We were just doing an impromptu stream. So don't take it as such.
Yeah, for sure. Oh no, definitely not. There's many different presbyteries out there. So the Presbyterians are more about how church is governed. So you have the PCA, which is more conservative leaning. You have PCUSA, which are all rainbows and
Yeah. So these are Westminster guys, apparently. Book of Confessions. First for the Church Constitution contains the Book of Confessions, 12 confessional documents, full text of Westminster Confession of Faith, its larger and shorter catechisms, which have historically informed Presbyterians believed, all that kind of stuff. So there's that.
Presbytery. Yeah, they're PCUSA. So if you go down to the footer of their website, yes, sir. If you go all the way down to the footer of their website, their presbytery is Foothills Presbytery. So that's the bigger branch that they have to answer to. So each individual local presbytery contains like elders that govern the local small congregation, but that board of elders answers to another board of elders, and then it goes into like regionals all the way up to like the main branch, and that's where you find PCUSA. So like if you hit the Foothills Presbytery, their logo there, if you zoom in on it, Presbyterian Church USA. Those are the more liberal leaning Presbyterians.
I'm kind of surprised
why this guy would go off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of surprised because I would have thought that they would have been the more conservative branch, not because they're good, but because they have, it's more like a, how do I put this? An old style of thinking. I guess is one way of putting it. So I never would have considered. But if you want, we could switch to
PCA.
Yeah, what is the PCA? Let everybody know what
I don't
that is.
mind. I have no love lost for PCUSA.
Yeah.
PCA is the Presbyterian Church in America. They're the more conservative leaning. So they're a little bit of a, they broke off from PCUSA. Guys, I'm on the holodeck. What are you doing?
You know, it's funny. Just as you were saying that, I'm trying to type up an AI image of us going through the holodeck. So, just as you said that, it was like perfect. for the thumbnail.
Nice.
All right. So, let's see if I can even back up to that point. All right. Let me know when you're ready, or unless you have something from PCA you want to let us know about as far as the sanctions. Are you PCA, or what are you?
Oh, I'm neither.
You're
I
not. Okay.
haven't decided which one to affiliate with yet. There's also the Orthodox Presbyterian America. And then there's the Free Church of Scotland that I've kind of tried to come in communion with as well. So, yeah, it's just trying to figure out which ones are, stable and which ones aren't because, it gets weird.
Right.
Some of them are a little more liberal leaning than others, but PCA seems like a good fit. The only problem is there isn't a PCA congregation within like 50 miles of me, so it's like a 100-mile round trip.
That's a problem.
And then all the other churches in my area, since I'm in kind of northwest area, so all the liberals from like the hills cities like Bloomfield Hills, Rochester Hills, and all those guys, like when they get money they move up this way and try to buy property, so you get like small like village communities that are really liberal. So we got one Lutheran church up here, and it's pastored by a gay female.
No, those are the
And
best.
then same with the Episcopalian church across the street from that one. And they're both homosexual female pastors, so definitely ain't going there.
Yeah, definitely the ones the orthobros are going to dunk on us for.
Yeah, definitely not messing with those guys. Those are the ones that I'd actually like to try to debate against and stuff. See if I can bring some sensibility to these so-called Protestants.
Get them on Swords of Reason.
But and then yep. And then the then the other two churches up here. There's one that's a non-denominational, but they're very, very into Darby. So I'm not so much. And then there's a Baptist church as well, but they're not Reformed Baptists. They're basically just we are what we are Baptists, and they're also
Independent. Are they independent fundamentalists?
And, they're really weird too. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the card I got from them. And then there's a COG up here too, but they're also very, very liberal. So, I mean, I'm into the old style services where there's hymnals and stuff like that, and not so much of this new age soft pop music. So, and then also difference in doctrine and theology, but I'm working on it. We'll get there, even if I have to relocate. That's what we'll have to do.
Oh, you're thinking about relocating?
But I'm hanging around to find a decent church. If there's none in our area and the drive's too far, then I'd just rather get close to one that's decent. Either that or I'll pray on it and maybe plan something myself.
Well, you could go to a red state, right?
But that's going to take a lot of thought and prayer. Yeah, Michigan's definitely a blue state. Not a fun one either.
Well, I mean, I've got Illinois is a blue state, but I've got a good church out here, which is rare.
Yeah, there's good churches around. They're just very few and far in between in the blue states.
Right. I think we might be having a little bit of latency, which is unfortunately one of those problems with Riverside. What people usually do is they'll go through OBS, they'll do that live, and they'll go through the back channel of going into Riverside and just not going live on Riverside and then streaming it that way, but I have not set that up yet. So, but I think we should be okay. Let me know if it just gets too much with the latency, because this is the first for me.
All right, sounds good.
All right. You let me know when you want me to stop, and if there's any lag on your end, just let me know.
We are here with Mr. Michael Spangler. He's an author. He's a pastor, Piedmont Presbyterian Church, and he's written a book. It's going to come out when?
Probably within a month. I've got my
man, we got a bear
Christian Race
raid
Realism.
copy here.
Obviously, Christian Race Realism is a little bit of a provocative title.
Thank you. Thanks to Speakeasy.
Welcome
and
in,
oh my
bears.
gosh, Tiny Pink Nuggets of Chaos, Shazzy Bear. I am the original vintage. Are you crazy, Alicia? Alicia Pacheco. Oh, I need to brandish myself for that. That was horrible. Please forgive me. Wrath of Reason. Everybody. Good to see you guys. Welcome to our show. We were trying to do this regularly, but it's definitely hard between all the things we got going on. Gentlemen. All right, so we are reviewing this phenomenon which I personally condemn, called Christian race realism, which is the idea of like a supremacist sort of movement within the Christian movement that's taking spiritual ideas and trying to attribute some kind of value to them. Have a great stream. Thank you so very much. You get the bell big time. All you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and look up at Unapologetic Preacher. It's Rev Russ's channel. You know what, Rev, go ahead and put that. I'm going to put that in the chat as well, so everybody can subscribe to your channel if they have not already. There you go.
God bless everybody. Welcome in.
Just a dumb mod. I don't understand. I don't understand. Did I not call you out, Steelborn? I'm sorry. Rowdy Gowdy, welcome. And so we continue. So he's got his book here. He's got his little book he wants to pitch to us.
To the normal masses out there, I know I'm kind of caught in a little bubble on Twitter, and I think a lot of people are, but that bubble is growing rapidly. With you host the Old Past podcast. You have Stephen Wolf, who has his Lone Bulwark podcast. You have Stone Choir. You have a lot of these other significantly.
Rev, are you familiar with Stone Choir and what they're all about? Premonition. Welcome, Based Grandma.
Stone Choir.
Yeah.
Not offhand.
So Stone Choir is run by this other guy named, I'm glad I forgot his name, but he looks very strange. He looks like what you would expect to be some kind of monk. And he basically is all this pro 1488, anti-Holly type propaganda type stuff. You ever heard of that? I'm speaking in code a little bit.
Not offhand.
But do you guys reject Christian supremacy? The idea that being Christian is superior worldview compared to all others. That is the supremacy of Christ himself. So I would obviously have to say that that is truth and therefore supreme over lies. But so the problem with supreme is it gives you like this hierarchy sort of thing. And we as human beings, even if we're saved, are not superior to other human beings. But that's the push that's there. Wrath of Reason.
More, you could call it right, you could call it Christian, you could call it traditional, masculine, whatever you will. I believe there is a pursuit of truth among these podcasts, these people, these hosts, everyone that's kind of pushing this narrative to kind of get
Hola Chapingro, thank you, Mr. Mod.
back to where we used to be. And let's say, I don't know, 1400 Britain, right? This is what we're kind of chasing after, is this idea where we can marry church and state to further the kingdom of God. Is that kind of where you're at with this?
I'd say so in a broad sense. I think Christian nationalism is a good term for how I see the intersection between spirituality and politics. And I'm glad to be a part of that movement.
Okay, so we're diving into race realism. I guess it's a more specific term, people can take it as broad, but everyone understands what race is, whether they want.
I don't understand what race is. That's what I had the whole debate over with JS and Mo. And the most I got from Mo is that there are people who have sickle cell anemia within black populations, and then that's as far as we got, as far as an example. So if I had that argument as the basis for what I knew what race was, there were black people with sickle cell anemia, and there's everybody else, and those are the two races. Why is he gripping his chair like? You know, that is a great question. Why is he outside with perfectly good upholstery? That's my other question. And my other question too is, why is this guy?
At this point, you're probably not avoiding therapy because of stigma. You're probably avoiding therapy
Premium.
because you've become.
I'm wondering why this guy is not wearing socks. What's up with this? What is up with this, my people? These things should not be. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Let me reduce. What is up with this? No socks. Give me a reason. Give me an answer.
You're
they do
a supremacist.
Setting and this dude's got
like how does that conversation carry
it looks
out?
like they're in a rural area, right?
Yeah,
and this dude's sitting out here with shoes below his ankles, no socks on. They claim they're from South Carolina. Oh, okay.
Is that a common thing in the South to not wear socks with your loafers?
I sure hope not.
Yeah.
But I know it's not a common thing to wear loafers out in the area that looks like that.
Yeah. Now, of course, Stillborn, I agree that our worldview and our ethics, our metaphysics are better, but it's not because we are better. Obviously, it's because God is supreme. Wrath of Reason enjoyed that. Hey, I recognize this person. I think you do too. You might know her.
Yeah.
Those are gonna stink.
Hey, darling.
Well, I have to know who I'm talking to.
Okay, so when he says that, what he's talking about is, are you a supremacist?
All of these things. And those words do carry some baggage with them. Nobody denies that. But there's obvious differences across the board.
He's talking about race realism there.
What do you say to someone that says, you're a supremacist? Like, how does that conversation carry out?
Well, I have to know who I'm talking to. If it's a friend.
If it's a Fed, then I'm going to say no. By the way, excuse the latency here between the two of us here.
Or if it's someone that's just clearly being dismissive, I could just say, sure, I am. And the reason for saying something like that is it's useful to just make a simple recognition that there is such thing as supremacy. Even before we get to the concept of race, God has, in many ways, put some men above others in his providence. And that's his wisdom.
Okay, so as much as I like to get to Steelboard's comment here, did you catch what he was saying there about race and supremacy and kind of doing sort of a three-card Monty there?
God set some men above other men. Yeah, not by a matter of skin color, I can assure you that.
Yeah, by lineage. And that's why I brought up Galatians 3:28 and also Colossians 3:11, where it says, there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. Now, I could even accept the argument that genetics gives rise to different IQ levels if you want. But what it doesn't give rise to is actual supremacy or some kind of hierarchy where God loves some lineages more than others. That's just not real.
Yeah, definitely not.
Not all are kings. Not all nations rule. Not all are powerful. Some are weak. In the family, we have parents and children. If we understand that that's normal to how God made the world, that there is supremacy or superiority and
hierarchy
and inferiority, some call it hierarchy, and I could use that term, though it has a connotation of a sort of religious order of priests.
Okay, what do you think about that in the context of discussions of race? There are parents and there are children. there are us, and then there's the rest. And there's hierarchies and greater and lesser. What are your thoughts on that?
I think those are mostly human constructs and not divine constructs. You know what I mean? Because, like, if you're not in Christ, then you're in a depraved state. Doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, where you come from. The rich man's box is the same as the poor man's box. And when we all go to the grave, we have a judgment to answer to, and the flesh ain't going to save us there. The flesh will drag us to the grave, but it ain't going to redeem us before the judgment throne.
Yeah, God is no respecter of persons.
Your race, your ethnicity, your lineage, none of that matters. Because that's all what goes to the grave, and what's left is the inner man. The inner man is not determined by any of those things.
Now, do you find any legitimacy to the idea that God gave hierarchies and some lineages to rule over other lineages in time and perpetuity?
No. Nah, maybe to hold land, stuff like that, to maintain a covenant promise till the seed of Abraham came. But no, not to rule supreme over all other men. Because if that were the case, then God would have sent Israel out beyond the promised land.
Yeah. Well, don't mention Israel around these guys, that's for sure.
Like in the Romanist church. But in the more general sense that God sets some men over others. No one should be opposed to that, but our age is. And the opposition to it we call egalitarianism. It's this envious opposition to even the idea that God would set some over others.
Which is ironically what people like these tend to go towards when you mention the Jewish people a lot. You know, they want to talk about IQ, they want to talk about supremacy and things like that. But if you mention how smart Jewish people are, as opposed to white people or any other people, then it gets their nethers in a tizzy.
Yep, especially when you show them the Old Testament. If they want to talk about a supreme race of people chosen by God, well, I can assure you, unless you're Jewish, brother, that ain't you. Not in that book.
Yeah, and even in the New Testament, name a single book of the Bible not written by a Jewish person.
Exactly.
They're opposed to it in many different ways. In sex, for example, with feminism. They hate the idea that God made woman the weaker vessel, as he calls her in 1 Peter 3. And that he requires wives to submit to their husbands.
Now, notice what he's doing here. He is making an equation here between things we actually have verses on and trying to make some sort of corollary with race or the lineage. Really, really slimy stuff in the name of Christ.
Which is surprising because he's taken a covenant, right? Marriage is a covenant. It's a covenant bond between a man and a woman, consummated by God. Like, he creates that bond. And now he's talking about race, like a racial hierarchy. But there's no covenant bond that says that there is racial hierarchy, right? So why is he comparing a covenant to a man-made construct, a social construct? It doesn't make much sense. You'll be hard-pressed to find contextual scripture to support his position. Sure, he can eisegete this into scripture as hard as he wants, but when he's compared to the full counsel of God, his entire position falls apart.
Yeah, that's totally right. So it seems like he's stretching everything as far as possible just to get his predilections across, just to say, look, I'm already this race, like, obsessed guy. And so I'm just going to use everything to say, because hierarchies exist, and I make these declared observations, therefore it's a hierarchy endorsed by God, the same as parents and children, the same as husbands and wives.
Mm-hmm.
And sets men and not women to be in charge in the home.
I could also see this guy coming up with an idea. Hey, you know what? everybody in my neighborhood, they should have a pool out in their backyard, no fence, and their wives must swim naked so I can look at them because King David did it. See, there's the verse.
You're talking about like that guy from Willow Creek. There was a pastor who actually was on a yacht somewhere, I think in the Chicagoland area, and there were these women, and they were swimming around naked around his yacht, and then he claimed, "Oh, I didn't know that," you know, mega church guy. I think, oh gosh, it was Willow Creek, but I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, sounds kind of suspect to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he knew what was going on, or at least he had no excuse to think otherwise.
State. Saying all that, there is no reason not to extend those things to race as well. As you say, it's fairly evident to most people that God has established different races of mankind. They are distinct, and obviously so, and that within those races there are different nations. We can call them smaller or sub-races.
Did you catch that? Sub-races. And he doesn't mean racing submarines either. At least that's not how it sounds like, or if I was going to be fair to him, if he means sub-races as far as like subcategories, I mean, again, then who draws the lines? And upon what metric do we draw them? Is it just melanin content, your nose shape, your average height? What is it?
Right.
And
it's
not all
impossible to set those kind of determinations, because I've seen white men with really wide noses, and I've seen black men with predominantly white features that what people would call white features: narrow nose, small lips, high cheekbones. So I mean, it's really hard to make those determinations. And if you're basing it solely on skin color, I'm white, but give me 3 months in the sun and I'm indistinguishable from a Latino.
Right.
Just because of how I tan.
Right. And then as far as me, I mean, hey. Just popped into say Rex. I'm happy to say you've embraced the Rex name with the T-Rex. However, I'm confused why you put a Goth Spike choker on the new avatar. Got something to tell us. Well, Mo, it was so here's the thing. It's kind of splitting the difference between Rex, either the dog, or Rex, either the T-Rex. And I'd rather not be a dog, but it's kind of part of the name. But either way, I do like the microphone insignia that goes with it. But yeah. He also won't be able to give us a reason to extend it to race. What is the it in question, Steelborn? Let me know.
And to draw on the meaning of supremacy, some rule and others don't. So one question I ask of opponents sometimes is, you're opposed to the idea of supremacy. What nation today is the most powerful on Earth? Well, they often don't answer because they know where I'm going. They don't want to go there.
You mean the nation that's partially white, partially black, and has foundations with also the Spanish in Florida, and then the French helped. I mean, I guess the French are white, according to them, sometimes. But, I mean, who are in the top echelons of most industries in this most powerful nation anyway, right? And who do people like this guy usually conspiratize, if that's even a word, conspiratize who's really in charge, quote unquote? Yeah. Okay. So he says to extend the idea of hierarchy to race, right? So even if you wanted to say that it existed on some level, yeah, the hierarchy part is the part that people usually go to when they want to make some kind of claim about that. Not always, but very often.
But the answer is obvious. It's the United States of America. I say, okay, what color are we? We're a white nation. Even today, majority, it's getting close to not being a majority, but still we are the largest in this country. But I would assert that America as an ethnicity is white by definition. It's certainly who founded our country, and it's the race that's spoken of when in our Constitution it says to us and to our posterity. We could go on about American history another time if you like, but my point is people see it. They see the reality of racial supremacy.
Do I need to say it any louder than he already did? And there's Marilyn. I mean, it's like right out in the open.
We could discuss American history another time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me ask him this.
Oh, yeah.
Were the Spanish white? Were the Portuguese white? If they were white and they are in charge of Mexico, why is Mexico a third world country? Why are all of the other South American countries third world countries? Or most of them. I mean, I don't know. Is there a first world country in Central or South America? I'm not aware of it. Chipingro?
I don't think so. Brazil's a hard runner-up, but I won't consider them first world.
Right.
Not by the classic sense.
Yeah, Chipingro. I'm gonna say he's probably dead on in every sense of the word. Every sense of the word.
They want to deny it, but more accurately, they hate it.
And this is supposed to be called Christian, as in following the Lord Jesus Christ.
The denial is a way to get around this idea that's just a fact and they don't like. And one proof of that is that the left is always speaking about white privilege. Well, they're not wrong.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Riverside. You just need a concept and a way to record it. First,
well, the left, it says white privilege in the sense of like leveraging existent forms of power to suppress and oppress other people. But what he's talking about is the privilege of having some identity that he thinks is cohesive called whiteness. Reexamination, Steelborn says, also most of the West Coast was settled by a mix of Spaniards and Russian Orthodox. Also, one of the first colonies in Florida was established by a Greek Orthodox. Thank you for the history, Steelborn. Prince of Steel, or whatever you are. I like your VK thing, by the way. Congratulations to Steelborn for winning this past week's VK. Go ahead, Rev.
So I'm thinking what this guy's thinking here. It almost sounds like he's got not only skeletons in his closet, but something that resembles a ghost too.
He's got a rope in his closet.
The rhetoric sounds quite familiar.
Right. I wonder if he has a horse-sized ghost in his barn too. It was always amazing to me how those guys that we'll call them classic Democrats, the classic Democrats like to have a wardrobe for their horses as well when they go out gallivanting.
Conservatives and moderates want to speak about colorblindness and ignore these things, but the left is more correct in this respect in recognizing that there is white privilege. The difference is they hate it. And I would say, why hate it? God did it. We need to...
Okay. Chapter and verse, please. Citation, please. Where's the hierarchy? Okay, dude. God can give anybody he wants. Okay. This is so infuriating. There is a verse where Jesus says to the Father, Father, I thank thee for hiding these things from the wise and prudent, and revealing them unto babes. For such was good in thy sight. So if anybody has the advantage spiritually, it's those who are not puffed up with knowledge. It's those who have a simple faith and a simple reliance and a simple understanding, relying on Christ, dying on the cross for us, relying on God's love, relying on God's providence, despite the fact that we have sinned. And I think Rev Russ is typing up to find the exact verse that I'm talking about. But that's just me mind reading right now. Am I mind reading?
Mhm. I'm trying to find it real quick for you. Hopefully my computer holds up.
Also, let's not forget, the disciples
So I
tried to
built
stop
this
the little children. Oh, go ahead.
reference tool that works really well. Oh, I built this reference tool for Google Chrome. So it opens up kind of like a pop-up, allows me to do verse search, word search, Bible index. Works a little better than Bible Gateway. Bible Gateway's ads crash my system. So until I get me a new system, I'm stuck with this little thing. So.
Well, as you're looking that up, I'm going to also hit up that verse where the disciples tried to stop the children from coming to Jesus. And Jesus was upset about that and said, "Let the little children, suffer the little children come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God." What's going on with you guys down there? Never cite the Rockefellers as a source for Christianity ever again. Oh my gosh. It is on. It is on in the chat. All right. Matthew 11:25. At that time, Jesus answered and said, "I thank thee, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent, and hast revealed them unto babes. Even so, Father, for it seemed good in thy sight." So just because you're smart doesn't mean you're more spiritual. In fact, it has a tendency of actually making you less spiritual in the same way that being rich makes it harder for you to enter the kingdom of heaven. How many smart atheists are out there who are confident in their wisdom? Let not the mighty man boast in his might, nor the wise man boast in his wisdom, but let him boast in the Lord. I'm trying to figure out, let me see what that verse is, because that comes to mind as well. That's a very good verse.
Yep. I'm more reminded of Romans 3:10-18. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of their way. They are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips. Whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes.
Apparently, they want you to check your DMs, Mr. Mo. That's a great verse. The one I was citing too is Jeremiah 9:23. Thus says the Lord, "Let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches." But let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercise loving kindness, judgment, righteousness on the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord. So it has nothing to do with your skin color or what you've inherited from your parents' bloodline.
To submit to God and be thankful for the way He's made things.
Yes. So you briefly touched on where Paul talks in Galatians. There's neither bond nor free, male or female, or Jew nor Gentile. Do you think in the coming years race is going to be seen in the same way that transgenderism is seen as a product of feminism?
Do you mean to say that just as transgenderism follows from feminism, so this colorblindness follows from?
I mean to say that the logical consequence of feminism is transgenderism, which radicalized a group of people into understanding that feminism is bad, and therefore the colorblindness is a inevitable logical end to, or at least the destruction of our systems is
What is the worst thing that could happen with color blindness? And by color blindness, I would mean that giving no importance to somebody's genetic pigmentation layout.
I would say not much, if anything. I mean, it's one of those human constructs, and it's an archaic one. that's easily done away with, and we've proven it time and time again. In fact, Christianity itself stands to prove just that. Um, in the early church, you had converting Jews, and you also had um, pagan Romans and Greeks, all converting to Christianity in communion with each other. So yes, we as Christians, our Christian heritage proves that we transcend these social constructs of race.
Absolutely. And here's the false comparison too is there are actual moral guidelines for how men and women are supposed to interact with each other because they're made distinctly from the very beginning. That's not true with so-called race either. Okay, Chapingro has something to notice with. To be fair, suppose they are correct, and it is a distinction like the distinction of sex. Do we not suffer by ignoring such distinctions? How would we suffer? That was my thing. Oh, I don't know what competition. I don't know what that is about. But do we not suffer by ignoring such distinctions? I am trying to think of how we would suffer by ignoring those distinctions. Like, is there something moral we're doing wrong by ignoring those distinctions?
I would say no. There's nothing immoral about it. And it's not like we would look at somebody of a different skin color and be like, oh, I see absolutely no difference in either of us. We all look the same. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about treating people equally with the same due respect as everybody else, and what we would expect from everybody. Do unto others as you'd have done unto you. And that actually means something. So it's in relative to that, how we treat people and how we respect each other.
Yeah, and
not
even
so much
the Bible
like,
has
we're just putting on the blinders.
Yeah, and even the Bible has that passage. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? It's like even the Bible cites like skin differences, but that doesn't mean anything. That's not a moral judgment upon the person or an ontological judgment that their fate is sealed in some unfortunate way because of the way they look, inherited by their parents.
Inevitable logical end to color blindness that will radicalize people to the acceptance that America was built by and for Europeans,
yes,
or whites.
I think I know what you're saying, and I think an analogy will help.
Well, he says Europeans, and he says or whites. So I wonder if like the Irish and the Yiddish Jews and the Italians and the Greeks would fit in there too. Jack of Blades.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you would have walked into a bar in 1810 and called them all Europeans, I don't think you'd have been walking out of there too soon. Those were fighting words back in the day. Calling them Europeans or Brits or anything of the sort. The men that came here, they were separated from that. They didn't want to be a part of the crown, which is why we had a whole Revolutionary War over it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
no, we're not Europeans either.
No, and even the English don't consider themselves Europeans, in a lot of ways. They think they're better, number one. And then number two, they had that global empire in such a way that Portugal didn't, in such a way that Spain didn't, in such a way that France didn't. So that's why you have a Brexit and you don't have a whole lot of these other countries breaking away. There's not that same undergirding in the British culture that there is in these other European cultures where there's more familiarity due to land sharing. So Chapingro says, what these guys are doing is a confluence of things, reference to Confluence, the channel, and I think. For one, they are rejecting virtue signaling by vice signaling. For two, they are is-oughting. Oh, I hate this. They are is-oughting. Finally, they are masking it in academic speak. Yes, they're doing what I call philosopher caveman. They're taking the dumbest ideas and using lingo and jargon of the scholarly and academic type to fluff it up a little bit.
So feminism says basically that women can be just like men. Well, that's a small step then with transgenderism now to say women can be men physically by surgery or hormone therapy or whatever. And I think it's true with race as well.
I think it'd be funny if this guy woke up and we put a bunch of melanin in his skin and he just looked in the mirror and shrieked in horror.
Color blindness seems very equitable and fair, just like feminism. That's how it presents itself. We're just going to ignore race, just like previously we ignored whether someone was a man or a woman. But it has created now this idea that you can become any ethnicity you want. So just by a change of location and a few official government papers, that a man from Pakistan can be an American.
Yeah, so I think there's a difference between nationality.
American is not an ethnicity; it's a nationality.
Right. Exactly.
He tries really hard to talk smart and look smart, and then he says something like that. Just shows you how kind of dumb he is. Yeah, a man from Pakistan can absolutely become an American. He hasn't changed his ethnicity. He has simply changed his national allegiance, which is your nationality. Your ethnicity is not tied to your nationality. Your ethnicity is tied to your heritage and bloodline. I mean, come on, man. Be a better supremacist than that.
Yeah, well, apparently about it. That's about as smart as supremacy gets you these days.
And we, even under race realism, can grant the use of words. American can mean someone living in America or someone with American citizenship.
Right.
But a Pakistani cannot be an American because those are two distinct ethnicities. That would be like saying that a...
Okay, is anybody going to point out to him that the whole reason Pakistan exists is because of the British Empire separating them from India? Because they wanted to separate Islam from Hinduism? It's basically just that.
Yeah, this guy. A Pakistani cannot be an American. Okay.
Wolf can be a dog.
A wolf can be a dog. Another one of the greatest hits. Oh, Rev Russ had to leave because it was just too insane. That's a shame.
A wolf can't be a dog, but they're both canines. Where do you think we get dogs from? We've domesticated wolves.
I think he was saying a wolf can be a dog,
through selective breeding. That's how we get little. I hope he didn't just say a wolf can't be a dog.
Oh, hold on. Let me see what he said.
Pakistani really cannot be an American because those are two distinct ethnicities. That would be like saying that a wolf can be a dog.
Oh, you know what? You were right. I was wrong. So he's saying a wolf can't be a dog, even though they're both the canine. We have the common ancestor.
I mean, an Alaskan Husky is that a dog? That's a dog, right?
Those
and they
things
can breed
bite
with a wolf to create hybrid wolf dogs.
Yeah.
So they're compatible in gene. They can breed, so therefore they're the same. This guy needs to be a better supremacist.
You know, they don't make supremacists the way they used to.
Nope.
Chapinger asks, "What is?"
See, this is the result of public schools right here.
Or really, really bad homeschooling, which I'm sure there is. What is an American? Does this guy even know the American moral proposition? That's what the amp means. It doesn't mean the guitar amp that I've got. Wrath of Reason says, a wolf can be tamed into a dog. I think we breed for demeanor, though, when it comes to dogs. So we also breed for foxes. Like if you were in Russia and you wanted to have a fox that you could raise as a pet, they have to breed from the foxes that don't growl at you when you put your hand in their direction. And they take those foxes and they breed domesticated foxes from those foxes that had the exact temperament for that kind of thing. Now, they still pee all over the place. You're never going to get rid of that. but you can have wolves that are basically raisable, that you just have to breed them for, and you have to select for behavior.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yep. Breed for behavior, for certain characteristics and physical traits. For example, the pit bull has a short snub nose, kind of faces up. That's so they can jump on, latch onto a bull, and hang on to it. They were bred that way by the Spanish.
Yeah. Chapingro says, most homeschooling is bad homeschooling, for the record. It breaks down along wealth and education line in the parenting like everything else. Well, would it be better or worse than public schooling? Because let's even say the schooling is bad. Compare it to like the availability of sexual contact, the availability of drugs, and the availability of flying bullets. We have an ongoing debate with a false god in the chat. Just so everybody knows.
We might even recognize they're part of the same family. I recognize that of all the races of men, they're all one family of Adam. That doesn't mean that we're the same race. And we can't pretend we are, nor can that boundary be crossed, certainly not by one man.
Where is the boundary? What is the boundary? It can't be crossed. Can your kids be crossed? Like, you can't cross the boundary. Okay, so does that mean that every
That's a boundary
time
that can't be crossed that we have?
Go ahead.
So is he talking about like interracial marriage at this point? There's a boundary that can't be crossed, or is he talking about like segregation, as far as like all the white people live here and anybody of a certain skin complexion can't come here? Is this where he's going?
Yeah, so I think what he's saying is that the races, when you're inside a race, you cannot leave that boundary line of a race to go to another race. It's not clear what race is from his perspective, but yeah. That's the thing, is like once you're in that lineage, you're stuck inside. It's kind of, yeah, you're in your lane and it's over. But my question is, if you have what is called a biracial couple, do you have one new race, or you have somebody who is like the Mason-Dixon line is split down the middle of their body, so to speak?
Oh, that's like how did he put it a few minutes ago? A sub race.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Neapolitan, I call it ice cream. The ice cream
I'm
fallacy.
thinking that's the only way he could rationalize that. Yeah.
Wait, I don't know if you were a mod on Steelborn's channel. Did I not make you a mod? I don't remember. I had, let's see. I think I have Rev. Pretty sure I got Missing Mod. I've got Chapingro. And yeah, I don't remember. But back up to, speaking of Chapingro, so he was talking about, for homeschooling, you're forgetting the lack of availability of social development, the lack of ability of diverse teachers, and the lack of ability of resources. in all ways, those are really good concerns, but there are upsides and downsides to the kind of socialization you get. Obviously, the downside is you won't be able to relate to the mainstream person, but the upside is you also don't exactly act like many of the kids on a moral scale that will send you careening into the wall. Now, Tiny Pig Nuggets of Chaos had a rebuttal to that. She says, there is no lack of social development in homeschooling if the parent isn't a lazy parent. Oh my gosh. Mr. President, thank you for joining the stream. Maryland respects the Dinkus. Una momento. Oh, Tiny Pink Nuggets had something else up here I wanted to get. Sports groups, organized sports, things
I have
outside
to
of school.
agree with
Absolutely.
Tiny Pink Nuggets on that one too.
Yes, even though she is a pink nugget of chaos, she seems to have her house in order.
One generation. In the Bible itself says this in Jeremiah 13. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? Well, the answer's not even given because everyone knows it.
What would you tell a man who can scroll for hours but can't work for 10 minutes?
You're hired.
And hates himself for it every night?
No.
We largely agree that America is an ethnicity or is a race.
Doesn't he look like Gus Johnson a little bit? Hold on a second. Do you guys know who Gus Johnson is? He was a comedic YouTuber, and he got really big, really big, and then he had a controversy, and then he got less big. But he got so big he had a Comedy Central gig for a little bit. Let me see if I can find this guy. Yeah, so Gus, this is Gus Johnson. Doesn't he kind of look like Gus Johnson?
Image.
Yeah. I mean,
A whole lot.
yeah, I think they're related. Maybe they're the same person. Maybe he had
Gotta
a
be
career
careful.
change.
We're being racists, you know.
Yeah.
All these white guys look the same.
The Gus Johnson race. Gus Johnson supremacy. Oh man. I think Mo Rebuttal needs to have a Swords of Reason with Chapingro. We're gonna make it happen. Clear failure of understanding of the American moral proposition. Maybe I'll have to open it up so we can talk about the American moral proposition. I think Chapingro's baiting me into this. Here, okay. Tiny Pink Nuggets kids, the Nuggetettes are actually more socialized now than they were in the system. I will say this too. I tend to notice that kids who are homeschooled are probably a little more apt to talk to adults than kids that are not homeschooled. You literally get all the social benefit and avoid throwing your kids in the public school grinder, which, you can find in the Another Brick in the Wall music video. You're going to say something, Rev?
Oh yeah. Well, we homeschool, so both of our girls are homeschooled. My wife's a former Sunday school teacher, camp counselor, and she's a very great teacher as well. And also I help out when needed, but that's her lane. So I'm there to oversee, and she handles everything else. But our girls do fantastic, and yeah, public schools, from my personal experience, aren't that great. I learned more outside of public school than I did inside of public school. So
Mo Rebuttal, it's always a pleasure having you. If you're not a mod, I can make you a mod. Thank you so much. All the best to you and yours, and have a good night. Thanks for joining us.
How many generations does it take?
God
How many
bless you.
wars fought for our grandfathers does that take? What constitutes the creation of a race out of another nation? For instance, Germans and Britons are Americans. How does that creation, if you will, of a nation happen? And how do you define that?
Well, generally, it's separation and amalgamation. And the normal process.
Separation and amalgamation. Like the Canadian race. They're separate and they're amalgamate. They have the Frenchies on the eastern side, and they got the California Canadians on the western side.
I wonder how he can tell the difference between a Scot and a Brit. Are they amalgamized?
The Scots sound like this, and they have red hair, and they wear kilts, and they have these turkey-like, gosh, what do you call those things that are very aggressive birds? The gallioke, I don't know. No more heresy out of you for the night, says Steelborn, as he slams his sword and his hammer on his anvil and makes it a finality.
of amalgamation is by intermarriage. So when a people are relatively separate from another people, or when a group of peoples are relatively separate from others, whether by geography or politics, and they start intermarrying one with another, and they mix so that they're no longer distinguishable, and that continues for a few generations, then you have at least the beginning of a new nation. And certainly the line can be hard to discern when it's just a group of peoples living together and now a new nation, but eventually it gets there. And I think it's well established that there is such thing as the difference between a German and a Dutchman.
So, Chapingro, to fill you in, she claims to be God, and she claims that we're God, except when we're not good in her eyes, and then we cease to be recognizing our godness, and we see that as heresy. And there's a certain toleration point I have for it, and then at a certain point. And I do trust my mods for the most part, Obviously, no one is perfect, and I'm not perfect myself. I rarely ever lay the hammer down on people, but I do it when it gets to a certain threshold where it's like, this is too much, and I'm responsible to God for what is on my channel. And also, Tiny Pig Nuggets is right. It is a long list, but that's the far and away the top reason. What would you say, Rev?
Well, yeah, that's a very, very big reason. And, not only that, but the idea that immortality of the flesh is hinged on her understanding that just popped up yesterday, that nobody else in church history had an understanding of. So her idea is that because we believe we're going to die, we accept that. But if we didn't accept that, we accepted her idea that we're all God, then we'll live forever, literally in the flesh, not age or die. That's a strange one.
All right, Steelborn put her in timeout for the night, which means expect to see her puppet account come out. She spews on morals, but boasts with prideful arrogance, says Tiny Pig Nuggets of Chaos. Steelborn adds, she just spouts heresy, tells any Christian who gives her pushback is told they're going to hell. Yeah, well, we have warned her that she can't play with fire like that. We want her to be saved. We want to see her soul come to Christ. We want to see her to be recognized, but we want her to recognize that it's not her that is God. It's God who is God. We've offended God with our sin. And because we offended God with our sin, we have earned hell. We cannot be God. The whole point of sin is trying to be the gods of our lives, right? And so in our usurpation of God, we have earned damnation and the wrath of God forever and ever. But he sent Jesus, his son, to die on the cross for our sins, who is fully God and fully man, to bridge that gap. So if we trust in his sacrifice alone to pay for our sins and ask him for forgiveness and ask him for a new heart, then he will give us a new heart that loves God, hates sin, has the Holy Spirit, and turns to Christ. They're not going to be perfect. There's going to be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back sometimes, but it's going to be a real change, a real evident change, and a heart that longs to be what Jesus says and who Jesus is like and who God is like. And in this life, you will see the difference between true and false Christians. And these guys in the video, I'm confident in saying, are false Christians. There's just no way around it. They make these ontological distinctives that the Bible never gives any permission to.
Yep. And I can't agree with these guys, especially in the terms of race and racial supremacy, because the Apostle Paul defeated that outright with the contingencies between the Jewish and Gentile believers. So if I'm to carry the same message that Paul did, there is neither Jew nor Greek, free nor bond, male nor female in the body of Christ. For we are all one in Christ. And if we belong to Christ, then we're seeds of Abraham, heirs according to the promise. So I can't preach racial supremacy. We're all under sin and we all need the same Savior. Doesn't matter what color our skin is.
Yeah. Stillborn, I would say you can put those both out for the night. Look, Marilyn, if not for the grace of God, so we would all be just like Marilyn in her state of denial and things like that. So I have no problem with you, like, banning both the accounts for the night as far as the heresies. I totally understand. There's just a part of me that wonders if there's time for her. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but we're not good judges like God is of the future and what can happen to somebody's heart if they are eventually exposed to truth. I just know that from my own life, I know there's been times in my life where I needed grace. And, there comes a point, obviously, where you have to just cut it off. And so if she keeps doing this, yeah, then all of her accounts should be permabanned. I just know that she's a soul just like me and that she needs Christ just like I need Christ. And I just hope that if she keeps coming around, maybe she will hear some truth that will prick her heart and put her in the right direction. But, you can think of my conclusions however you will. Shazzy Bear, queen of the chat.
Or a Dutchman and American. There's a distinct ethnicity, though the family connection is obvious as well.
Yeah. So we took a trip to Orlando, Disney World, not too long ago. We're out there walking around. This short little story.
I'm imagining he's like, there was the mouse race at Disney World, and there was the duck race at Disney World, and there were all sorts of races, and it was this horrible, disgusting place you never want to come to. And the ducks were speaking this unintelligible gibberish.
Do they still have that? Do they still have that one exhibit at Disney? It's a small world after all.
Oh, he probably hated that.
I'm pretty sure that would trigger him for sure.
He probably climbed out of that boat, got in the water. Room service. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? There was a comment she actually left a while ago that I wanted to highlight. Don't need strangers influencing my children in any form. I raise and teach my kids our beliefs. Too many crazy, unhinged people in the public/private school system. That is 100% correct. You were going to say something, though, Rev.
Couldn't agree more. Oh, yeah. Couldn't agree more with her.
But we got there, and you hear stories about there's fat Americans everywhere at Disney World. Well, maybe it was the time of year that we went, but there was hardly any Americans there. The people didn't speak English. Nobody was really fat. A lot of them looked South American, Brazilian, Mexican, and some of them came over from Europe, and you can tell an obvious difference between the Europeans.
Oh boy, se habla español. Got to build that wall. Got to make that moat. I wish I could do Donald Duck, but
that was a good Mickey Mouse.
Thanks.
You can make some money with that one.
Yeah, when I feel more comfortable on YouTube, I can do some of those voices. But gosh, something like that. All these illegal immigrants. But I'm gonna stop while I'm behind.
The Americans and those from South America, and I just thought that these people that are advocating for multiculturalism and diversity are actually destroying the diversity itself. Right? So multiculturalism destroys.
Now I can't get Disney supremacy out of my head with the Disney Kingdom. I'm thinking about like Goofy 1488. All right.
Always a diversity, yet they want to scream and yell about it. How do you get through to someone, or can you, to let them understand that if you want to preserve the diversity, you must retain some sort of separation.
Okay. What are the means of retaining separation, sir?
He's trying to say segregation without saying it.
Yeah. Mr. Spencer, I want to say segregation.
This is the whites only Disneyland.
She's now in the Discord telling me I am God am. Well, first of all, she is definitely sloshed, if that's how she's putting it. And second of all, tell her you're married, because that's the biggest hit on you probably had all week. Yeah. But true, Shipingro, I don't mess with the litigious company, which, you know, again, if they think that that's good enough to sue, it's probably good enough to hire, isn't it?
We should care about the end times because a bad day is coming for the residents.
Yeah. A bad day is always coming for the residents of Israel. Let's be honest. You can't get on a bus. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to a dance festival without something bad happening. So, I mean, it's just a self-fulfilling sort of thing out there anyway.
Yes, egalitarians like to speak of diversity, but they're not serious about maintaining it. We should perhaps put it this way. They'll speak about diversity for everyone but whites. It's the more honest way to put it. Because they don't mind that Pakistanis and Indians and others want to maintain their distinct ethnicity. They'll allow...
Well, here's what I think. I think that we in the West have a tradition of being more open to people from other places because we're more influenced by Christianity than any other place in the world, any other civilization. Western civilization sees less essential distinctions and less good reasons to maintain prejudice over people who look differently and are from different places. Whereas I don't think that's quite as true around the rest of the world. Do you think that that makes any sense, Rev Russ?
Sorry, I was kind of muted. Yeah, it makes sense in a way. I mean, of course, there's going to be diversities of people and culture, no matter where you go, even in the United States, you know? Like, you can't take somebody from California and say, well, this is identical to somebody from Georgia or Tennessee or Kentucky. The way they talk is different. The way they act is different. The things they eat is different. The way they work, the way they pray, all of it's different. I mean, there's similarities, but you can tell when a good old boy walks into California or a blue state, you know. But yeah, so I can understand that. But really, there's no driving line that says, well, you know what, the Californian can't come to Texas or Tennessee or Kentucky or Texarkana. So I don't really get where his argument's coming from. Because even when we were settling those areas of the West, you had Germans coming in, you had Scots coming in, the Irish were coming in, the Brits were coming in, and these people maintained their families and their ethnicities as they built and established most of this country. So, but they still was able to blend together and cohabitate without having to be fully segregated from each other. I don't know. This guy's gonna have a hard time trying to raise this case these days, but
tell them their separation, their ethnic identity, their acting for and as an ethnic group. But they don't allow that for whites. They want amalgamation with other nations, other races, for us. And it's shameful. So they can keep saying diversity, but then you can ask, what about whites?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very specific to a certain type of nation that they want to force diversity on.
Yeah.
Little puppy in the background.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to say, again, there's probably no other nation or civilization, rather, than Western civilization that is quite as open to whatever Shapiro was calling pluralism, well, maybe not pluralism, but it used to be called multiculturalism. Now, I do think multiculturalism can't stand. You have to have one culture that you assimilate to. You have to have a shared value to have a nation. A nation divided cannot stand. A house divided cannot stand. We know that all to be true. So there has to be assimilation, which is the problem with these open borders, and the problem with like letting in massive amounts of unassimilated migrants who form their own impenetrable pockets that make it impossible for them to assimilate afterwards. Those are real problems, but that has nothing to do with prescriptive features that come with some aspect of life you call race. I don't see that at all.
Yeah, definitely not. And as I was pointing out earlier, you have different cultures, even within white culture and within America in general, especially regional cultures. So the difference in accents and stuff like that, preferred foods, the way people dress, act, and all that stuff, you can point to different regions of this country and see differences. But we all have one shared common kind of social morality, which makes us Americans. So
yeah, that sounds similar to
it's
the
like
American
subcultures within like a main culture.
That sounds similar to the American moral proposition that Shapiro was talking about, as featured on Ryan Mullally's channel, Natural Law, in which he had a debate with Pisco and Nanfan. Apparently, the chat is still about Marilyn, even though she is long gone. She lives in your heads. That's why she, maybe, guys, maybe she would think she's
rent free.
Yeah, maybe she would think she's God less if you guys. Oh my gosh, anyway.
What else do you kind of cover in your book? Obviously, we can talk about nations, but and races itself.
I didn't read your book. I don't think anyone else is going to read your book, but what's in your book?
I didn't know how deep you kind of went into some of that stuff. I know we talked briefly about Charles Murray and some of his works. Where you stand on, I guess, kind of call back to the earlier discussion we had just a second ago is, and maybe you can take this. I think you can argue.
Nuggets, I'm just thinking that Marilyn's still watching. She's always watching. With her many Maryland 13 sock accounts. 13, of course, being the number of, wasn't Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, that's why he spelled magic with a K, because it was the 13th letter of the alphabet. All that darkness. She just told me that making arguments is appealing to the... So the argument would be that arguments appeal to the devil. Appealing to the devil's bad, therefore you shouldn't make arguments. Okay.
And Jesus raised a lot of arguments with Pharisees and Sadducees. Was he appealing to the devil, Marilyn?
It's disgusting. I have to admit that
Paul
there's
raised arguments daily with the Grecians.
Yep, Acts chapter 17. Yeah, it starts to wear on your brain the more you listen to heresies, especially ridiculous rank heresies like who God is. Charles Murray's on the left, and he argues differences require us to give certain genetic backgrounds.
You know what ends up happening?
Yeah.
You know what ends up happening when you listen to too many heretics and heresies? You end up going off the rails like Tertullian did. See this guy right here? He wrote this thick book against one man, Martian. Like, the patristics were really heavy on the heretics.
And there's the missing mod. Raise him up for the missing mod, but not evolution.
Already for certain attributes, but as soon as you argue in superiority for IQ, you're then called a supremacist. And it's typically by the people that that place a hierarchy on the attributes themselves and not necessarily the outcome of the collective of the attributes.
What the heck does that even mean? The outcome of the collective of the attributes. So it's not the attributes, it's the outcome of the collective of the attributes. So there's this kind of like pool shot, this logical pool shot he's making between certain factors, and I don't understand what he's saying.
I think he's just saying words at this point.
So clearly the superior intellect is not universal.
Does that make sense?
I would agree.
So
Shazzy Bear, you have a great night. All the best to you out in the Emerald Isle. Farewell, Shazzy Bear.
Good night, Shazzy. God bless.
I asked her for
Always
making an
great seeing
argument.
you.
Oop, yep. I asked her for making an argument to prove God's existence. Is that demonic? Oh, I hate to even have her repeat the word God out of her mouth just the way she means it and uses it. So
significant portion of someone like the academics place a high regard to IQ because that's where they are. And so as soon as you argue for a racial standard for that thing, you are then a supremacist. Whereas I believe it should be more argued in the position of the outcome of nations and what they have produced, whether that be spiritual or physical kingdoms.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. IQ is useful precisely because it is a measure of productivity. It's we should say, a predictor. How you do well on IQ tests is very close to how well you'll do in life, because intelligence is basic to human living. And that's why IQ tests used to be used for employment until that was made illegal by the Supreme Court.
A form of ketamine was recently approved by the FDA for depression. Ketamine.
So I don't know how you can separate the two things. IQ gives us a very measurable way to determine whether someone is likely to be productive or not.
Chipingro, there are definitely degrees of rebellion, and you don't claim to be God, which is a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that's a very different kind of heresy. In fact, it's one of the original ones. If you read the temptation in the garden, that's what the serpent told Eve. If you eat of this, you'll be like gods.
Yeah. And also, you're not abrasive and trying to pick fights in the chat and saying crazy crap. Like, I think we would, for different reasons, say that the claim that an individual human being is God is just ridiculous. But we would both at least agree on that. I would say apostasy is definitely a very serious sin. It's very bad, and it puts you at a big spiritual disadvantage in terms of like returning, because often apostates have hardened their hearts towards God. So that's bad. That's very serious. I but at the same time, there are definitely degrees. Missing Mod says, I only go crazy sometimes. I guess that's on weekends, right? Weekends are the time to go crazy.
IQ maps what we see in reality. So you look at nations that are high.
Hold on. What?
To determine whether someone is likely to be productive or not. And IQ maps what we see in reality. So you look at nations that are highly industrious, wealthy, that excel in science, in liberal arts, culture, music, art, etc. They have higher IQ. You look at nations that are living in grass huts, mud huts, that are not.
Rev, so you look like you're rearing up to say something.
Did he say liberal arts? Yeah, he said liberal arts, and then equated that to high IQ. Has this guy seen what comes out of liberal arts? There's a video on the web going around of this lady who just sits down at a piano and just bangs on it, indistinguishably, just like a child, and she got a standing ovation. Well, that's liberal arts. Liberal arts is basically taking something that is otherwise a beautiful form of art, such as playing the piano, and then turning it into garbage.
Well, I think that's avant-garde, but I think liberal
I would say
arts,
it's the exact opposite.
So liberal arts is, from what I looked up, humanities, social studies, natural sciences, and formal sciences. So key areas include literature, history, philosophy, psychology, sociology, and political science, along fine arts, language. So I always took it to be like book-based sort of things, but I think what you're talking about is the lesbian dance theory form of taking what we think of as fine arts and crafting them into something nonsensical and postmodern, right?
Yep. At least that's what liberal arts looks like nowadays.
Oh, we have a viewer on Twitch. I don't know what that's about. I think it's a Russian bot. So, yeah, we're not gonna fuel the Russians, are we? Chapingo said we should talk about that one day. I'm always happy to defend or explain my faith. That is true, the Chapingro. And while I am not Orthodox, I would say that I would rather you were Orthodox than apostate. That's for sure. Chapingro says, how do we maintain Western culture if we don't engage with the classics and thus liberal arts? Well, I'm thinking reading the classics is good. I would have people definitely read the Bible and know it through and through as well, though. Looks like, Rev, I'm going to have to get you in touch with these Shure microphones with sort of range. Because let me tell you this. I had my Shure microphone in my main living area in my last studio setup. And I would have the air conditioning on. And it would be loud in the room, but you couldn't hear it with the microphone. Oh, Sport Brand brings up a great point. He says, that's like John Cage. I hate John Cage's music, but I like some of his ideas. I don't remember John Cage, but I remember Philip Glass, where he would have a choir of people like saying random numbers. Let's see. Is bot comrade. Yeah. My bad. Yeah, is a comrade, but is on Twitch. So I'm glad we at least have some interaction, even if it's with electioneering. Election have you, comrade.
Not well developed, that despite decades, centuries of investment from other countries, don't seem to show much return on it. And no surprise, their IQ is lower. So a lot of the debate centers around IQ, and there's a lot of things people use to try to undermine the test, but the tests reflect reality. And the number is a handy and quick way to speak about what you're saying, how races, how people actually perform in life.
Yeah, well, it seems only natural, right? If two parents have brown eyes, you would predict that their children have brown eyes, right? If two parents have, or the father's 6'3" and the mother's 5'11", you would expect the children to be somewhere around 6 foot. And so if the mother's 4'6", 4'5", the father's 5'3", 5'5", you would expect the children to be around 5 foot, right? These only logically follow because we agree that genetics exists. And so if a father and a mother have an IQ or that is significantly higher, or if they're productive members of society, you would then expect the children to be that thing also. And so the issue is people want to draw that line where there's.
Does this sound like eugenics to you at all? I'm smelling eugenics in the air, like a Glade plug-in.
Yeah, definitely sounding a lot like eugenics. Selective discarding the undesirables. Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
If you want to have the most productive society, you got to have all the smart people getting together, you know. And we can't have all these dumb people meeting all these smart people and getting married and having babies with them. Chipingo definitely prefers convos. If they get heated, they can be fun too. But I'm not
to determine how smart a child's going to be based on how smart the parents are. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. This is where people meet each other, like Steelborn and Chipingo. That'll be a very interesting back and forth to hear. And Steelborn, now that you're streaming, you and Chipingo could also have a stream dialogue. I think that would be amazing between the two of you guys. And Chipingo says, like I said, the meaningful question is their feeling on abortion for other races. Well, let's see if they get into that.
Physical attributes and mental attributes, but the mental attributes aren't genetic. Why? Is it just a simple denial of reality? Do they not want to accept reality?
No, I think so. And you bring up a good point about families. People know this. This is a reality. Race is just family lineage writ large. A race is just a very large family. And people know.
So family, it has moral ontology to it. That's the problem. You're supposed to respect your elder, your father specifically. You're supposed to respect your mother. Children are supposed to obey their parents. and so when he says that race is one big family, he is saying that there are different families out there and then different hierarchies within the family by extension. And by hierarchies, it sounded like he was trying to use the mother-father dynamic earlier as an explanation or at least an example of what he was talking about. But there's an idea where you can separate families. Like, I have a family that's going to be different than your family, Rev. But that means that we have two different moral structures where it's not applicable both ways. Like, for example, just because if I had kids, you couldn't tell my kids what to do, right? But where is the moral separation, the moral breakdown between these other families he's trying to construct in his mind?
Yeah, it's a really bad way to phrase race, right? As one big extended family, because then you're kind of like embracing the whole inbreeding kind of notion, right? If they're family, then you're basically living near your distant cousin to some extent. It's a bad connection for him to draw, especially with the line of reasoning he's already been going on. He's starting to fit a stereotype of his own, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Let's just, at this point, we just bring out the washboard and the jug with the 3 X's on it.
Oh, in daily life, this works in families. Smart kids come from smart parents. And I don't know why that's controversial, but then the applying of it to races is.
What about the smart kids that come from dumb parents? What do you do with that?
Or the dumb kids that come from smart parents.
Well, those have to be offed. By this standard, says Steelborn, if all members of my race are my family, then the only way to avoid inbreeding would be to exactly, and that's what Chipingo was bringing up. Exactly, the only way to avoid inbreeding would be to race mix. So the best way you can preserve your culture by not making dumb kids with your inbreeding defects is to leave your family. All right. And
what we have here with this guy waiting for the floods and the chair on the left here is he thinks he sounds smart. He thinks he's got a really good idea of how things go and how they ought to be. But when his ideas are actually pressure tested, there's a lot of contradiction in what he's actually saying here and what he's trying to get across to us.
Oh yeah, well this interview is about softballing. It's not about pressure testing, which is why he can use all this sort of body language like and be unchallenged, and Zeb goes along with it. This is also very true. Stillborn nutrition has a massive impact on someone's adult IQ. I think Stefan Molyneux even brought up that breastfeeding your kids and emphasis on having as much breast milk given to your kids as possible when they are very young is crucial for their development, including IQ. Chipingra, I don't know what the Flynn effect is. Maybe you could fill me in on that. But it's not totalizing. We're not talking about Michael Flynn, who got framed during Russiagate, are we? Sportbrand says, family seems like the wrong word. You're telling me relatives would make more sense. Regardless of how you see the origin of people, there would have to be a relation at a certain point. Yeah, I mean, obviously, people have cousins, people have uncles and aunts, people have nieces and nephews, but ultimately to say because we're the same phenotype or we have similar pigmentation that we're part of a family, it's kind of stretching it.
Familial ties are a little different than shared ethnicity or shared heritage. You know what I mean? After 50, 60 generations separated, you're no longer family in a familial sense. When you attribute that label family to something, now you're creating that familial bond, whether it be by blood or by spirit or adoption even.
Right. Spinger says the Flynn effect is the long-term substantial rise in average IQ test scores observed over the 20th century, averaging roughly 3 points per decade via AI. Did we all come from Adam and Eve? Yes, Abe, but they already cited that because these guys are Christians, and according to them, we all came from Adam and Eve, but we're not the same race. Now, you can riddle me that if you want to. Well, Stillborn, like I said, they already covered that because apparently within Adam's loins were multiple divisions that had yet to be manifested over time. That's what it seems to me. One of these questions I want to ask these race people is, if you took a sample of like Adam's DNA and you put it to grow into humans or whatever, you could just open up a lab, right? Would the same phenotypes arise in all their planets? If you had like copies of Earth, other Earths out there, would you have the exact same arrangement of features and phenotypes? Is this a solid thing that was meant to happen by design, or is this just circumstance? I call what people call race and phenotype, I just call circumstance of proximity. You're around people, you marry the people you're around, you have the babies of the people you marry, and the people that you're around tend to average out in looks as a result of proximity. That's all it is. But Flynn effect is related to nutrition. Would make sense. I wonder if that has to do with GMOs too, because GMOs have saved the world.
But again, I think it's just an egalitarian, envious opposition to God, in whose wisdom and sovereignty he has made some intelligent, some productive, some to rule, and others.
Finding a therapist
How do you think that phrase ends?
you actually connect with can feel like a lot to ask, but 82% of
not to be.
Oh, I'm thinking so online.
Yeah, so I have this.
Not to be. So to be subjugated is what he's trying to get at, but he would rather say not to be. So that way he doesn't get attacked by the villagers with pitchforks.
There are those who are born to rule by dint of birth, and then there are those who they are meant to rule over because they are just too inferior and stupid, and they need us. We are the essential workers here. And the rest of these are the expendable, slobbering imbeciles in the field, directionless and foolish, waiting for us to point our fingers and decree where the things ought to be placed. To drool. Drool! Steel, okay, Steel, I do not believe in evolution. I am a 6-day creationist through and through. I always have been. Okay. I don't know what I said that would lead you to believe that, but I do not believe in evolution.
This idea that
I do believe in speciation. I do believe in genetic drift. I do believe in the what would you call it? The thing with evolutionary pressures. In terms of when I say evolutionary pressures, I mean like on the micro level. Natural selection. All those things are true, but that does not mean that we all had common descent from one single-celled organism. That we didn't have daddy paramecium, all the way, 4.8 billion years ago, or how many. We have moral agency. We have a spiritual aspect to us. We have a rational aspect to us. We have, I kind of wonder, look up the life cycle of the Eastern Siberian golden plover. That's one thing to check out. When it abandons its nest and somehow this chick who's never seen its parents flies off to Hawaii from southern Alaska. Yeah.
everyone has a role to play.
Yes.
And you may not know exactly where your role is, but
it's color-coded to make it really simple. If you're darker than me, I get to tell you what to do because I'm not dark. And if I'm lighter than you, you know what to do. And you can tell when the boss is coming.
So wait, this is based on IQ and skin complexion, correct?
Yeah.
So isn't he supposed to be bound down to the Japanese and the Chinese, who have higher
most people
IQ,
have an IQ.
better complected than us?
Basically, he's supposed to be bowing down to the Japanese and the Jews, but he'd rather just think about people darker than him bowing down to him based on everything I'm putting together. Mr. President, Abe Dinkus says, isn't that the leftist paradigm? All the brown people need special rights and protection. Actually, he hit up on that too. He said that the left recognizes white privilege, but he characterizes white privilege as the privilege of being white rather than whites constructing an oppressive system to put people who are not considered white down. Steelborn says, you didn't say anything. I just heard many Christians try to say they're compatible. They are not compatible. Romans 5. I always cited, well, not always, but I cited Romans 5 a lot when it comes to evolution because Romans 5 makes it clear that through one man sin came into the world. Adam was not some allegory about hominids roaming the earth. Adam is one man, a real man, just as man as the Lord Jesus Christ is. Yeah. They are not compatible. And even Jim Bob in his debate with Redeemed Zoomer brought up Romans 5 in his debate. So it tells me it's probably a pretty good argument. Does this make albinos the boss? In this guy's view, yes.
That's where me and Redeemed Zoomer kind of disagree. Yeah, it is with the whole evolution thing. No, I don't think evolution is at all compatible with Christianity. It devalues the image-bearing nature of man, for starters, to say that we evolved from something lesser than what God created us in his image to be. So no, sorry, evolution is not compatible with a Christian framework. But more than that, if you take evolution to its most extreme, and this is what I like to do to pressure test things, I take it right to its most extreme conclusion. Show me any instance where life comes from non-life. Show me it happening in nature. Show me it happening in the lab. If you cannot replicate it, then it's not possible. You can theorize it, of course. But if you can't show me life coming from non-life, then evolution simply can't be true.
Well, here's the thing, Rev. What an evolutionist is going to tell you is that evolution has nothing to do with the origin of life. Evolution has to do with biodiversity, how life became so diverse, and there are so many different forms of life. And so they'll say it could be a god that made life. Maybe it's not a god. We don't know. But evolution is not here to answer that. That's a question of abiogenesis. Sport Brand says there are some weird facts like
So
anyone
they
with any
basically make an observation that they can't prove, present it as facts, and then say, well, you know what, we're not trying to tell you what the origin of life is, even though evolution, taken to its most extreme case, is literally the telling of the origin of life, which is why it has historically been at odds with the Christian understanding of the creation of things, particularly life.
Yeah, it's definitely at odds with Christianity.
It's a slippery slope. That's why I don't play with the evolutionists.
Steelborn has to hit his 100% metal bed with his 100% metal pillow that he forged in the fires of Mount Doom. Have a good night, sir. We look forward to seeing you again. Sport Brand brings up.
God bless Steelborn.
Yeah. He brings up there's some weird facts, like anyone with any level of European ancestry is almost certainly descending from Charlemagne, with the British roots have a high likelihood descending from King Edward III. King Edward III also being a direct descendant of Charlemagne. So, and there was a Key and Peele sketch about how all the black people in America are descendants of Thomas Jefferson, but that's a whole other thing altogether. R.I.P. abductive learning. Well, it also, it depends on what your starting point is, I would say, Chipingo, based on what you've taught me about abductive learning. Stillborn, have a good one, and amen. There are no proofs in science, FYI, so I guess it's all bunk. Okay, Chipingo, I look forward to your videos. I will not pressure you, but I would say that I think your videos reviewing, kind of like how we're doing, reviewing in a mathematical, equational, logical way would be very, very useful for bad forms of argumentation, so that you could spot those, point those out, give us the tools to do that, and then we could watch.
Idea. And I think a lot of people that are trying to overplay their hand or overreach and are being allowed to by the system to do that is what's bringing the system down. And so in the long run, if you allow people that are incapable of doing the thing that they are supposed to be doing in a system that is set up to be done by someone that is better equipped to do the thing, you'll have planes falling out of the sky.
It's true.
You'll have ships crashing into bridges. You'll have the Suez Canal blocked up for, I don't know, a couple $100 billion, right?
And so you'll have intelligent kids stuck in dead-end jobs that they're overqualified for. And no one is happy.
We all know who those jobs were meant for. They weren't meant for those people. They were meant for these people.
See, this is the thing. It's not just societal problems, it's personal problems. No one's happy outside the role God has assigned for him.
Okay, check that out. Check that out. No one's happy outside the role God has assigned for them. And you know what role God has assigned for them? The role I think that God has assigned for them, based on my paradigm, now by my crap book, Christian Race Realism. You know, like how has he cobbled this together? How this is a racial caste system where he looks at people on the color code. Isn't there a meme about this on Family Guy?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Peter gets pulled over and he has to hold up the color card to determine if he gets a ticket or something.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, you're good to go.
That's it. That's the meme. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you and I probably
very poorly too, because his argumentation and the way he's presenting it has no depth. Like it could be picked apart very easily. Just sitting here listening to him.
Well, that's why we're doing that here. But I want people to be aware that this kind of thing is out there, and especially in the Christian nationalist movement. And that's why people who are Christian nationalists have to be either, if they're not part of this brand of it, they have to know that this kind of evil is infecting the movement and needs to be eradicated from it. That's the issue that I'm worried about.
It come to mind just from growing up. You know, I live here in the South, as you do too, and when I grew up, the people who were the janitors, the housekeepers, were black. I had a black babysitter. That's a lowly position.
You were, he was as born in the South as I was, as I was. Like, if you're from that area, South Carolina, North Carolina, you have a very distinct accent. That accent right there isn't from that region. He's a little farther north, I would say Ohio, Indiana, Michigan area. That's where his accent comes from. Certainly isn't no South Carolina. So, and also, look how old he is. He can't speak on the segregation age because he wasn't even around at that point. So, what's he talking about? Is he an old soul?
I don't know. I'm not a linguist. Are you? Are you highly familiar with Southern accents?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Most of my family comes from the South.
Interesting.
So I know the difference between an accent from Tennessee and one from Georgia areas, and then also you've got the Texan accent. Texarkana has its own accent. You could even go as far up as Minnesota. They have their own accent. But yeah, South Carolina, North Carolina, the accent's a little thicker than what he's got. What he's got, like I said, sounds like Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, kind of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if he's from Chicago.
Oh, I'd be surprised if you're from Chicago because I was just in Chicago today, because it's my backyard. But yeah, Chicago is definitely more mainstream American accent, similar to mine. All right, Chapingro is saying, there is something substantive. If you two versus them are two sides of a binary, I'd have to choose Rex and Rev, but there are dangerous truths and genetic realities handled with care, but still. Okay. What we're talking about, Chapingro, I'm not even sure what you're getting at, my dude. But I will say, yes. In terms of my debate with Mo, yeah, you can only you got to watch out for certain medical conditions, and there are consequences of proximity and genetics and things like that. But you're not going to say there's an ontological difference. I even granted earlier in the stream that sure, we can say that IQ is genetic. That's fine. So what? So what? What does that have to do with assignments and hierarchies that were used based on these color charts? I know that you're not advocating for that, but what considerations, if you want to just, let's make it explicit, not tiptoe around it, then what considerations am I missing? Ish is right, Sport Brand. Ish, indeed. You're an Can you imagine being an ontological babysitter? You were born to babysit. You were born to stock shelves and pick cotton and all that kind of stuff. That's your lot in life, says the guy with no socks.
Mm-hmm.
But they were happy.
Yeah.
What's the point of picking cotton if you won't even
field like that with no socks on?
I was gonna say, what's the point of picking cotton if you won't even put your socks on when we make it?
And we were happy in our position. And
oh, I'm sure you were, sir.
Everyone was agreed that this is just a normal way to we relate to each other, and there's no tension, and life went fine. That's because if everyone knows his place and stays in it, then things work well.
Okay. Where were the Vikings, back then? Like, there was a time before the gospel. There was a time before the Roman Empire where Upper England was just a bunch of people naked running around with blue paint on their face. Chipingo says IQ, personality are highly genetic. The influence. What with these guys misses, I can find plenty of white genetic groups that rank lower on the totem. Yes, absolutely. Part of it is, well, I'm not an expert on genetics, so I'm going to back off from making too many statements. But if Mo rebuttal is correct, there can be environmental impacts for better or for worse upon your lineage going forward.
But egalitarianism.
He used specifically sickle cell anemia as an effect that came from malaria in your lineage. Not too aware of things that can make your lineage go up in IQ, but I think one of the things that you talked about, of course, is the Flynn effect, which I'm going to keep in my back pocket in future conversations.
Says no, it can't be, and has to mix everything up and think that everyone's just an interchangeable cog that you can put in another place without damage to the machine.
Ah, so they have a machine, and they have a place for you in the machine. That's a little creepy. What machine are we making? The Death Star?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if this guy had like previous experience in like team building for corporations or something. You know, he shows up, he's the motivational speaker, trying to prep up that sales team. You're the best, you're a cog in the machine, you know, we all have to work together. You have your place in the company, and you know, we all work together, we make it function, but don't try to overstep your bounds or fight for that promotion. You got to be right where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you know that type?
No, well, imagine him also just doing that same thing, and he's like, you look dark. You must be in the mailroom or something like that. You know, you look white. You must be in the executive leadership team.
And he's pointing at the and he's pointing at the VP of sales.
You look Jewish. I'm going to see you after class.
I think that's what a lot of people like to look to and call nostalgia.
Yeah. Mr. President, Abe Dinkus says humans are not interchangeable widgets. Otherwise, sex and identity doesn't matter. Well, also, Abe, you served this fine country. I don't think I'm the kind of person who is, I don't know. I've not been through boot camp, but I don't think everybody is meant to serve in the military either, just on an individual personality level. I don't think everybody is meant to be a mathematician. I don't think everybody is meant to be an artist. Try and take your modern personality type of a mathematician and put him in front of a painting mural. Take the average painter and try and make him to be some kind of theoretical physicist. It's not going to work, even on an individual level. Not every kid you're going to have is going to have the same preferences and professions as you are. And when you get to be 20 years old and up, you start to have your own belief system separate from your own parents. You become an individual. Sport Brand says, fun fact, a janitor was a prestigious job in ancient Rome. They were the priests who cleaned the temple of Janus. Now it's a lowly job. Strange how history works. I'm going to give you space, Rob, because, again, the latency is a killer.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the latency. I don't know. You wouldn't be able to pay me enough money to clean up a temple after any of those pagan rituals. I mean, it's not the holodeck, you know. It doesn't self-clean, so definitely not. They would have to hold those guys to a high esteem, or nobody'd ever want to do the job.
Yep. Chapinger says, so you're saying we probably shouldn't let failed painters run the country? Yeah, probably not. Or people who are getting no-show job cash from Burisma out in Ukraine who have sons as failed painters. Or can you really call him a failed painter who makes a lot of money because his daddy's the president? Oops.
When they pull up the 90s, they say in the 90s, the late 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, were this peak euphoria of racial tensions. There was none. But I think you kind of illustrated why that was, because we all had purpose and we understood our place in society. and that's been.
Yeah, in the 90s, everybody just did their race thing. That was why we had harmony, because everybody was in their caste system. That's not what I remember.
Does he not remember the California race riots?
I guess not.
I mean, one that Rodney King that the LAPD got a hold of, and it sparked a whole lot of riots and protests. People were actually uh, uh, hurt very badly and unalived at those riots and protests. Like, is this guy serious? There's some utopia, euphoria of everybody just getting along kumbaya in the 90s.
Yeah, I would say after that, though, 90s through early 2000s were probably the height of cultural, what you would call it, race relation peace.
Oh yeah, for sure. But to say that it was all kumbaya the entire decade of the 90s is a little rough to prove on paper.
All right. Abraham von Dinkelstein says 92 or 93 was the race riots. It could have even been 91 with Rodney King. Can't we all just get along? Let me look that up. 1992 Los Angeles riots. Terrible times. The 90s.
Inverted. Everybody likes to follow up with, well, not all. Well, sure. But on some level, we have to recognize that we have to speak in general terms, or we're never going to have a productive conversation at all.
That's right. And a race is a genus, so we have to speak generally, or else we can't speak at all.
Okay, let's speak generally. Generally, every white empire has been gay and gone gay. The Greeks went gay. The Romans went gay. Western civilization in France and England and a lot of places are pretty gay right now. Does that mean that whites are genetically more gay than any other lineage of people?
It's an argument that can be made.
Uh-oh.
Especially based on the historical track record.
But that's only if you're making observations over time about people. Oops. I guess there's a gay gene and it's in whitey.
If people say you can't speak about racial characteristics because of exceptions, they're telling you can't speak about race. And if you can't speak about race, it might as well not exist. So it becomes this deceitful way to just deny that race is real.
It's never been easier to start a podcast than with Riverside.
Yeah, you tell me about that. It's also never been easier to rip your constituents off by giving them features and then putting them in a higher tier of a subscription.
Here's how it works.
Here's how it works. First, take your money. Next, take your features.
But also,
Sorry, we're using Riverside right now, and this is the latency problem. I would use StreamYard more because there's no latency between me and Rev Russ with StreamYard. But with Riverside, I have the subscription, gives us clips. It's all cool and everything like that, but it's not perfect. Far from perfect. But it's more affordable than StreamYard.
Be real. The exceptions are much rarer than people think. How many black geniuses did you know growing up?
I mean, I can name maybe 3.
But you knew many more whites who were very intelligent.
Sure.
And it's the same for me growing up, and that's just the reality.
Yeah, I mean, people like to point to the Thomas Sowell, the Ben Carson, Clarence Thomas. I mean, that's about all you get.
Yeah.
And
there's some pretty smart black YouTubers out there that like Coleman Hughes.
I bought the names of white geniuses. See, what he's confusing here is he's confusing intellect with notability or a celebrity, for example, a name that you know, right? A very smart individual or a genius, sure. But there's still a lot of geniuses out there that would prefer not to even be known by the public. They'd like to live in anonymity and not have to worry about all that, right? So he's trying to pin intelligence to popularity.
Shh, Pingra, we don't talk about them for some reason. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Is like the people with the highest IQ should be in charge, and then they complain that the people with the highest IQ are in charge. Well, what system do you want, man? Honestly, yeah, and that's exactly it. He's using IQ as a proxy for moral worth / value, which Christ did the opposite. You know.
Yes, exactly. And if we try to measure somebody's actual worth, their spiritual worth and value based on their intellect alone, well, a lot of people's gonna miss the bar, and I'm afraid the two gentlemen in this video would be among them.
Well, yeah. Again,
And if intellect was a sign of superiority, I mean, I know a lot of very smart gentlemen, and these guys fall a little bit low on the totem pole to me.
Yeah. Let me be clear. Okay, never mind. Yeah. I'm gonna let that one go for now. My point is, sorry, Rev, you had the better point. I'm just kind of meandering at this point.
And then it's been, talking about the Supreme Court. It's been packed with women. So that one gets me in trouble when I start talking about it. But it's simply the case that you have the conservative female on the court siding with the liberals in every single case.
I mean, except for fetus deletus, right? Which is kind of a big deal. Wouldn't you say?
Very big deal, yeah. So is this a complaint that there's women on the Supreme Court? Does he not worry about their views and opinions? I mean, would he rather have two staunchly conservative Christian women on the Supreme Court? Or, well, let's throw a little, for the sake of it, two African American judges sitting on the Supreme Court. They're extremely conservative, extremely Christian. Then you have two white women who want to replace them, but they're extremely liberal. Which one's he picking?
Yeah, obviously, if you had to pick between two women, you'd pick the more conservative. And now, let me see when this video was released. So this video was released 11 months ago. When was Roe overturned? Wasn't that in the first term? Or was it in the second term? I don't even remember anymore.
I think Roe was overturned in the first term.
I think so too.
Trump's first run, if I'm not entirely mistaken.
Yeah,
because that's
Roe
definitely
overturned.
Not a new thing. We would stay. They still are, but
oh, you know what? We're wrong. June 24th, 2022. So this was during the Biden administration to really stick it to him.
And so at some point you have to recognize that you're never going to shift the country right if women are.
Yeah. So basically he forgot Amy Coney Barrett and how much of a big deal that was. Unless, of course, fetus deletus was congruent with some of his goals, let's just say. Amy Coney Barrett is closest to Scalia on the bench. Oh, so are you saying that Alito is too close to Thomas at this point? Or because I used to call him Scalito when he was first being introduced to the court.
In Congress, in Supreme Court, or wherever it is. Right now they're carrying babies up to the house to speak. It's like, you should be at home with the baby.
Yeah, the Lord mocks his people in Isaiah 3:12, saying women rule over them. Children.
Okay, that's true. That part is true about Isaiah. Rev, let me ask your opinion on the citation of Isaiah 12, because that is, I think, a compelling argument from a Christian perspective.
Right on. Well, I know that women shouldn't assert authority over men in the church. My 11th great grandfather, John Knox, took that a little bit further than just in the church, and he really had a axe to grind against women by the name of Mary, who called themselves queens. So, I kind of fall somewhere in between there. But I'm more along the lines of in regards to order of the church and the governance of the church, more so than the governance of man. I would say, because even if we look in Old Testament, we have the Queen of Sheba who came and visited Solomon, so we know women rulers existed, and they weren't condemned for being women rulers. I think the wisest man in that time, Solomon, would have been kind of condemning towards something like that. So, I mean, gotta be able to ride that line a little bit.
Yeah. So, Isaiah, chapter 3, rather, verse 12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. So, how would you, let me ask you this, Rev, would that preclude you from ever voting for a woman president?
Oh, it depends on the woman president.
That makes sense.
So, for example, we know that in the United States we have two options at the end of the day. It's either going to be a Democrat, it's going to be a Republican, right? So I have to weigh the options. Is this woman that I'm potentially voting for, one, is she a Christian? Is she conservative? Is she upholding Christian moral ethics? And then what's her opposition? If her opposition is somebody that's extremely liberal leaning, somebody that's so far left that it's dangerous and detrimental to the well-being of this nation, then I'm going to vote for the woman. I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's one that one must swallow, because we can't make those kinds of determinations, well, based on just their sex or even their race. Like the example I gave earlier with the Supreme Court justices. Are you going to take two liberal white women, or are you going to take two staunchly conservative Christian black women? How do you make that determination?
Yep, it's got to be based on their values.
Be, by sex, and it can't be by race. It's got to be value based. And that's why I really like what Martin Luther King Jr. said: "Judge me not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character." And that I can agree with.
And then he also said, "Hey, those ladies over there who aren't my wife are pretty cute," but that's a whole other story.
Yep.
Chapingro says he called her out specifically. I'm guessing he means the people on screen. And he says Alito has been closer to Thomas in the lockstep voting. Amy Coney Barrett is being based originalist. Not to mention she offers pragmatics in her writings. Number one on my list right now. Interessante. Yeah, I think it might be time for Thomas to leave, not just because of that rich friend debacle he got into, but just because it'd be nice for us to get somebody to for longevity of conservatism on the Supreme Court. But that is another topic.
They're oppressors. Everything's turned upside down. You have the weaker vessel exercising the stronger position. And that applies to race as well.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, you got the weaker vessel, and that applies to race as well.
Yep.
That's I don't know, man.
I mean, how do you grasp with that, man? It's like the relationship between men and women. He is trying to make some analogy
about.
He's trying to make some analogy between like men and women, and
it doesn't really work out so well.
No, and it's kind of creepy too, because you think of the relationship men and women have with each other, and then like
it is
what there's some kind of marriage between two families, because he's calling races families, and he's making this analogy between them and the races and the sexes. What is this?
Yeah.
We're ruled, crushed, and literally murdered and raped by our racial inferiors.
Well, you heard it yourself. Again, this is part of the Christian nationalist paradigm. It's part of the Christian nationalist movement. Sorry, go ahead.
And just for the record, what this guy is saying right here is completely foreign to Christianity, to reformed thinking, reformed theology, to mainline Protestant denominations, going as far back as the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox Church. There is no Christian church on the face of this planet that holds this guy's beliefs. Not like that, unless they're completely off the rails and offshoot somewhere, and got all their people wearing Adidas and drinking Kool-Aid. That's the only kind of people you'll see carrying these kinds of beliefs.
It's a judgment
because
from
it
God.
should also be pointed out that early Christians, so when chattel slavery was a thing back in the day, Christians would often sell themselves into slavery to set a slave free. So they would take the place of slaves, right? They would purchase slaves to just free them, to get them out of slavery. So they would pay for the slave. The slave would come and live with them in a Christian life. And even though they still bear that legal title under Rome as slave, they weren't treated as such. They were treated as family. The Epistle Philemon is a great example of that. So no, this idea of racial supremacy, completely foreign to ancient Christianity.
Sounds like Deanna Troy wants to meet you in the ready room.
Yeah, they're arguing with me about holodeck time. As you can tell, I got the greatest holodeck spot in the whole ship.
Yeah. Would he be better with the no AB timeline? Let's see. The reason I'm curious about abortions is what would the breakdown of our country look like if so many hadn't happened in the last century? That is a great question. Here's the thing. Abortions take the lives of 40% of African-American babies.
You'd have a lot more babies, that's for sure.
Indeed. And you'd have a lot more black people. In New York, it's up to 50% of black babies are killed by abortion. I'm not sure what AB timeline is. I'm thinking of A theory and B theory of time, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
Our racial inferiors. It's a judgment from God.
It is a judgment from God if a black person is in charge, according to this guy. So that is, I mean, what else do you call that but racist? Like, come on.
And we ought to submit to it with repentance. But we can't recognize that this is right. It's not good. Everything's turned on its head.
Yeah.
Would he be happy with the no abortion timeline? No. Ultimately, no. Because he would see it as a judgment, because he is a sick man.
The crime statistics are ugly. Very ugly. And you can't deny them because they're being given by a government organization. that is supposed to be unbiased. You could argue bias in the opposite direction that is typically gone.
Oh, sure. I think we have reason to think that some of the statistics are a lot worse than we think.
Yes. And so people are continually in denial of this. So I guess the question is, what are some practical steps that can be made?
Militia.
Into turning it back.
Well, you could say, look, just open your eyes. You need to notice the reality.
Notice is one of the words that these guys use when it comes to the Uden. Aren't stats gay academic BS? Yeah, and apparently the Nobel Prize winners are in charge of the stats too.
Many people, especially those growing up in the South or in big cities outside the South with constant interaction with non-whites, have plenty of experience to draw from. And most people I know who are race realists and are serious about the differences and the inequalities in races are ones with intimate experience with other races.
Oh, this is a bad place to pause.
Everybody wants these, but nobody wants to do these. And everybody wants these.
The denial of race realism.
I will say that was still better than this entire video, you know, even though that was pretty gay.
Tends to come from people who live in white fortresses.
I bet at least Muscle Man wears socks.
In liberal parts of the country, and who just don't know or don't care about the reality of race.
Right. It's not their problem anymore.
Right. So I think noticing, but
real quick, remember what he was saying about intimately familiar.
In liberal parts of the country, come from other races with intimate experience with other races.
So they have intimate experience with entire swaths of people groups all together all at once. You've seen one, you've seen them all. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's kind of strange. It's like, oh, well, you've had some experiences with about what, maybe 5 or 6 people who you've interacted with directly.
Yeah.
And then what, maybe a good 30, 40 indirectly. And, you know, that's not counting like people you just pass walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store or stuff like that. I mean, you can't judge a whole group of people based on a few interactions. But I mean, a lot of people tend to do that, and I think that's just just one of those flaws of our fallen nature. And it's quite a shame to see somebody who calls himself a Christian embracing the fallen nature and trying to preach this doctrine.
Yeah,
you might as well just be out there preaching, you know, it's okay to go and commit fornication and adultery, because, you know, it's another aspect of the fallen, depraved state of man. But here's this guy.
Well, I mean, we are expressly told not to follow any teachings that promote partiality and division, and so this is the biggest thing where people take. I mean, the term we use for it is racism. I've heard the term ethnic partiality being used. I feel like racism has more of a punch to it than ethnic partiality. Although I understand when you say partiality, you're actually using biblical language to condemn it for what it is, and that's very true. It's just that it doesn't have the same historical message that the word racism does.
The denial of race realism tends to come from people who live in white fortresses in liberal parts of the country, and who just don't know or don't care about the reality of race.
Right. It's not their problem anymore.
Right. So I think noticing, but it's not just that, because thousands, millions of people all around here grew up with blacks. They have every reason to know the reality. They're presently seeing before their eyes the reality of other non-whites invading our country.
Yeah. Well, also it could be the fact that if you live in poor parts of the country.
I think I figured out what this guy's MO is.
All right, let's hear it.
I think I got a pin on this guy. Okay, he grew up in the suburbs in the northern state, right? And he saw the black dudes getting more attention than he was, and he got a little upset about that. And he's like, you know what? I'll move to where I think people are really racist. I'm gonna go to South Carolina with my Yank. And he went down there with his Yankee self, and now he's sitting out in a rural yard of a place that probably isn't even is, wearing no socks and loafers like there ain't no snakes around. Talking about he was born in the South. Boy, get out of here. Go back north. You Yankee. Sorry about your trauma.
I think he's just gonna challenge you to pistols at dawn now. You got to bring your wide brim hat and, you know, duel it out. Because now you're touching his southernness.
Oh. You better bring more than a pistol. He better bring a prayer with him too.
Yeah. Does Rev know about Curtis Yarvin?
No, I don't recognize that name.
This guy sounds like a Yarvin guy. I don't know what a Yarvin guy is, but yeah. So another way to look at this is like, well, I have also encountered my anecdotes of black people because I grew up in Rhode Island and everybody's super educated and super wealthy. And so I have my intimate encounters with races based on my anecdotal life experience. And therefore, I will now make my own judgments and proclamations as to what a race is. Whereas if you grow up in a poor area, you're going to find lower educated people, all that kind of stuff.
But they can't interpret it correctly.
Or don't know a race.
Because
what?
Oh, in poor communities, you find more than one race in those. Poor doesn't know race. There's poor white folk, and there's poor black folk.
Absolutely.
We could say they're ignorant, but I think the worst thing, and really the reality behind that, is they're cowards. Because it's been clear since the Civil Rights Movement that the white man will be killed if he is honest about this reality. And I say that word intentionally. Our schools were integrated at gunpoint, at bayonet point. If any resistance at that point had been given, there would have been bloodshed. Our people were forced into this at fear of losing their own lives.
Maybe two schools the National Guard had to be deployed to. It's not like the National Guard was deployed to every single school across the country, buddy. It only happened in two areas, and those were in deep blue states that were controlled by Dixiecrats. Okay, so those leftists. You're welcome.
And that's the thing, too. I mean, the civil rights movement was, I think, very powerful because people saw how poorly people were treated. People that just because they looked differently than you, they were seen as lesser, treated as lesser, and the ugliness of that was very apparent. And apparently, it wasn't very apparent to, I'm using the word apparent too many times, but ostensibly, it is not apparent to these guys who don't seem to see the ugliness in racism and what it does to people, how it makes people treat other people.
And now, sadly, we've been mentally captured so that the threats are not so clear, but still we act totally captive to the system. People are in absolute terror that they're going to lose their livelihoods, their reputation, even their life, if they're honest about these things. And that fear is stoked by examples of men that happens to.
Yeah, kind of talking about the...
So in other words, if you're a staunch, open, bigoted racist who openly hates people and they're very open about that opinion, you could lose your job and you're standing in an upright, moral society. Yeah, rightfully so, dude. Sorry about your day.
Whoops. Apparently, Bruce Lee dad was
Like
apparently.
all I hear from dude in a blue jacket is a bunch of coke that he can't be an openly racist.
Well, he's doing his best in the allotted time. Worst of all, by losing, we got the carpetbaggers, LMAO.
Integration at gunpoint. I know they didn't get the outcome that they wanted from Brown v. Board, and then we had mandated.
They're also forgetting Loving versus Virginia, where two people wanted to get married and they couldn't because they were, by all accounts, of different races, and that was somehow, that wasn't a gunpoint thing that they're concerned about, I guess.
Could be.
All the gunpoint stuff.
I thought they were talking about like the school integration.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you're really concerned about gunpoint stuff, why aren't you concerned about Reconstructionist gunpoint stuff? Why aren't you concerned about Jim Crow gunpoint stuff? Why is it only the gunpoint stuff of, oh no, I have to share my eraser with a black kid?
Mm-hmm.
Integration, and out from that grew the suburbs that we see today as an attempt at self-segregation.
Yes.
And if you look at any racial map of any decently sized city, you can see that we group ourselves by race.
Yes, the Loving ruling was against bans and interracial marriage, but I thought part of that was because there were people who wanted to marry who couldn't because there were bans in place, and that was done by gunpoint against people's will, and so people fought against it. But these guys don't care about gunpoint; they care about their point. They care about what they want. It's not about I'm so concerned about people being forced against their will. All this kind of stuff is like, well, what about people who want to get married and then they're not allowed to because the state proclaims that interracial marriage is some kind of thing? Yes.
We got a little bee flying around. We group ourselves by race naturally. And so then we got the Civil Rights Act.
So this guy says we group ourselves by race naturally. Well, we also group ourselves by style and by intelligence and by culture naturally. So does that mean that we actually have to segregate people in every level of society then too? Because people naturally self-segregate, then people should also self-segregate in every way, in every dimension, or just by what you call race?
Yeah, because Christians tend to segregate themselves as well from people who are more worldly, right? So a lot of times people become a Christian, they change the way they do things, and eventually their friend groups change, their social circles start to change. Even sometimes their family structure begins to change. Jesus said, I had not come to bring peace, but a sword. Said father against son and daughter against mother.
Yep.
So, yeah, like Christianity is one of the more grouped together kind of people groups in the United States, but yeah, I don't really see that so much as being a racial thing, right? Like people are grouping off into different segments and areas because of race. In fact, I see it more so grouping into different areas based on their income and income, and then what else? Oh yeah, income. Yeah, how much money you make greatly determines where you live in this world. I mean, you could be a white man, but if you're making 20 grand a year and that's all you're bringing in, well, guess what, Charlie? You're not living in the burbs.
Nope. You're living in Section 8 or something.
You're going to be living in the inner city where you can afford to rent. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it doesn't matter what color you are. Rent doesn't, the rent that you pay isn't determined by the color of your skin.
Right. Mo Rebuttal says, I popped in before bed, but interesting discussion. This would be a good discussion to have based on some of the languages I'm hearing. Crime statistics and culture or something along those lines. Well, yeah.
Which nullified freedom of association. And so now, not only do you have to hire disregarding race, but now you have to bake a cake for a gay couple.
Okay. How do I express how stupid this comparison is? How the lack of an ontological distinction here is so jarring, and you just assert that it's on the same plane. Like the ugliness of the comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Rent is determined by regulatory capture. Well, yeah, there's many things, including rent. The economy, of course, being one of them, which is why rent sucks these days, especially in the blue Midwest.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? These are the consequences of upending what was built by our forefathers and what people want to call American.
Our bookstore is like a portal.
It's neo-Victorian, it's steampunk.
And we wanted our Wix website to be too.
Right. So I guess the question is, these liberals that like to tout the founding fathers as these righteous men that built America, and Americans are the ones that that hold an idea that is American rather than a nationality. I would even argue that they would be wrong in agreeing that someone is American because they hold a liberal ideal or a classical liberal ideal. They don't hold the same ideals as the founding fathers, otherwise they would agree with us.
Right, because the founding fathers' opinions are evident and public. There are many resources you could look to for that. I've shared some in my book, others online. But just some simple facts will help prove this. The first Immigration Act in our country in 1790 required that any candidate for naturalization be a free white.
Who are these guys anyway? I feel like you've been reviewing these guys for 5 hours, says Mo Rebuttal. You know, I like to, when I start something, I like to halfway finish it, even if it's kind of long. We don't really do a whole lot of sequels, Rev Russ and I, but these are guys that are influential within the racist wing of the Christian nationalist movement, which is the chief reason I am not a proponent of Christian nationalism, because the racist wing, I think, is the most loudest and influential wing in the Christian nationalist movement I'm aware of, at least on the Protestant side. I don't know if the Orthodox have an alternative to this that is not racist. I will support Orthodox Christian nationalism over this any day. You got it, right? Even though I don't support Orthodoxy and all of its trappings and all the sorts of things, the ethno-state thing is unacceptable. So you have it here on footage, and the internet is forever. If the Orthodox come with a brand of Christian nationalism that is not ethno-statist, I will support that one. So insofar as it doesn't support any other any amounts of other craziness that amounts to as bad as ethno-statism. But that's where I'm at on this. Weren't we under the AOC in the 1780s? The AOC. I know he's not talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Articles of Confederation. Yeah, probably. America as a nation died in 1865 when the Union Marxist woke MAGA took over. What? Okay. Okay. Sure. All right, Rev. I know you got stuff to say, or I don't actually know that, but I feel like I'm dominating.
Oh no, I just thought it was funny. Union Marxist woke mega.
Yeah.
Person of good character.
Same as 1795, same as 1798.
Why did the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments have to be added to our Constitution? It was because 13th, slavery of an entire race, basically, was lawful in our country. 14th, because blacks were not citizens of the United States. And 15th, because they were not allowed to vote. That didn't just happen. These were choices of our founding fathers. And the racial revolution of the 1860s had to overturn that entire foundation.
I would love, actually, if Ryan Mullally would review this video. This would be, I mean, I hate promoting crap like this in a sense, but I also like exposing what is going on so people know that the panic about racism is not unwarranted where it is expounded. I mean, unfortunately, liberals ruined it because they made everything racist. You know, my skin is racist, drinking milk is racist, going to the bar is racist, you know, the sky is racist. But that only serves to roll out the red carpet for guys like this, because now our alarm systems have been completely desensitized when we actually have freakish ideas like this going on. Abe Lincoln was not a founding father. Nobody said he was. Christian racism isn't being a Christian racism is an oxymoron. Like, bruh, one of the few things Missing Mod has gotten right is that you can't be racist and a Christian. Absolutely true. Especially against the chosen people. You cannot be, you are not allowed. I mean, read Romans 11. Do not be high-minded against them. Right?
No.
So, yeah, in this sense, anti-racism, as they call it, or racial egalitarianism, is anti-American.
So when we have 45 and 47 running around saying, "Make America great again," this question has been posed to a lot of people. Specifically, one that comes to mind is Candace Owens was kind of posed this question by another black guy. The question is, when do you want to go back to? When was America great? And so, you know, I have my answer to that question, so I guess I'm going to ask you. While we have some wonderful kids playing in the yard next to us, you know, they'll be on.
Wonderful kids. I wonder what color those wonderful kids are that he's referring to make him smile so much. If I had to guess.
On the mics. But this is America. This is what America feels like. That's what America ought to feel like.
There's an ought. So he just made an ought claim with regards to race. Isn't that interesting?
So I guess the question is, where are we going back to? Or is there no back to go to, and we just need to move forward and kind of adjust from there?
I think we need to use the difficulty of this moment to seek a more perfect America, and that's not going to be merely rewinding the clock. America was not perfect at its founding. But if you want to narrowly focus on the topic of race, it certainly was much better in that regard at the founding. In that.
So his idea of perfection includes genetic homogeneity. And this is supposed to be better.
So wait, the founders got the racism right, but they didn't get everything right. I wonder what the other things he's talking about that they didn't get right, because if racism was the thing that they got right, I'd kind of like to hear the rest of his argument.
Well,
you know?
let's be
this country's great because the founders were racist, but as far as policy and as far as building a nation and an economy and fighting off 4 world empires and a 2 or 3 native empires all in the span of like 40 to 80 years, yeah, you know what? I don't think they did that great of a job, but hey, they were great racists.
Yeah, I think if we were to do a charitable thing, maybe they would say, well, freedom of religion was bad, you know, and then because now we got all the Muslims running around, we got the, you know, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what his angle would be, but
yeah, but he'd be talking with hindsight, though.
True. Mo Rebuttal says, Yeah, but that's like saying you can't vote for Republicans because a lot of his voice is TPUSA and they let gay people in and call them conservative. There's a difference between what a Republican is and what a Christian is, because the name of Christ is not necessarily intrinsically represented by Republicans, but it is represented by the name of Christian. And so that means a lot more to me and is a lot more important as far as how we engage with that. So if I'm not going to give my money, my voice, and my support to anything that calls itself Christian that is antithetical to Christ.
Yep, exactly.
That made a common sense distinction between us and them. The men and their offspring who founded this country, and the ones who were either visitors, slaves, or foreigners who were not even allowed in.
This course is about machine learning, modeling.
So,
could you tell he was into computing?
I think that kind of common sense approach to understanding the ethnic character of a nation, protecting that character by law, would be good to return to. But
have you ever heard of ethnic character before? That's a new one on me.
Oh, what was that? You cut out just a little bit on my end.
Oh. Ethnic character. Did you catch that?
Ethnic character. That's a new one to me.
Yeah.
The nation, protecting that character by law, understanding the ethnic character of a nation, protecting that character by law would be good to return to. But that's not just back to the founding. There were laws protecting immigration, keeping it whites only for many years later, even past the Civil War. And those were not overturned fully until the Hart-Celler Act in the 1960s. So it's not as if we're presenting some sort of reality that was only true in some narrow, tiny window of our nation's life. Now, these are historic principles of jurisprudence that are part and parcel of our whole American existence until the total revolution of the 20th century.
Well, we understood this even up.
Japan Girl, what is the total revolution of the 21st century? I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming Chipingo is still there in the chat.
Until World War II, where we have Japanese internment camps.
Yes.
Wait, hold up. Is he talking glowingly about Japanese?
Of the 20th century.
Well, we understood this even up until World War II, where we have Japanese internment camps.
Yes.
Yes. Huh? That's okay. Yeah, they're supposed to. They're using it as a citation of a good thing, an example of something that we ought to be and ought to do.
We racially profiled because it exists, and so
just because genetics exist doesn't mean that national loyalties are necessarily guaranteed to the level of being some kind of sleeper cell. It's wild.
A lot of people like to pin World War II as this defining moment to convert into this post-war consensus.
By the way, if you ever hear the phrase post-war consensus, let a little yellow flag go up in your head, because that often means that there is some kind of thing either about the H cost, or there's something about internationalism. There's something about free migration. There's usually something about race and culture in there in terms of post-war consensus, because they don't like how things shook out after World War II. And some of that is also based on what side they were on in World War II. Chipingo says, not a phrase I've heard before. These aren't my circles, to be clear. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And they're not our circles either. So I'm gonna have this go for a little bit more, but both Rev Russ and I have a week ahead of us. We've hit 3 hours, but I want to see if they go anywhere interesting with this before we wrap up for the night.
I like to look at World War One, but I don't think either one of them are wrong necessarily. I think the entire 20th century is a stain on what is America, and we've come a long way in the last 100 years or so.
The 20th century is a stain. I mean, morally, sure, but if you're talking about bloodlines, there's no such thing as a stain on America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very strange position to hold. The 20th century is a complete stain on America. Like, not around the time that we became a superpower. I don't think we was that big of a big dog on the block prior to that.
Well, also, if you think about it, and Ben Shapiro makes that point, is we benefited monetarily big time by Europe being out of the picture because of World War II. World War II, they were all in the shambles. And so we weren't in the shambles because outside of Hawaii, we weren't barely hit at all. And so we could be the superpower because we could take that market space in the world economy and say, hey, we can offer these services. We have got together as a nation. The women went to the factories. They made the cheese. They made the just the manufacturing type things that went out to the war. The men went out and did the fighting. The women went to the factories and did the building and the making and the crafting and all those sorts of things. And then so we already had this infrastructure built in to fight abroad as well as produce at home. And that production line helped to make us a fast-making Protestant work ethic kind of nation in the 20th century. And the Europeans weren't focused on that. They were focused on surviving because, their cities were getting bombed all over the place and the people were living in fear. And so all that to say, it's not the fact that we were white necessarily. It's the fact that we were across the ocean and we had a lot to work with and a lot to capitalize on. That's part of it, too. Now, if you want to talk about like the British Empire versus the Portuguese Empire and the Spanish Empire and the French Empire, sure, I can grant you that. But as far as America being an empire, it was at the cost, I would say, of a whole lot of other white so-called countries. Chapingro says, I think a question moral objectivists need to answer is when or even if the is-ought usage is a fallacy. Keep in mind, Hume is one who points out and rejects this as a fallacy, but I'm pretty sure common sense Scottish moral objectivists reject Hume. When, even if the is-ought use, it's not about it being fallacious. It's about misidentifying when an is an ought, because I think even Stefan Molyneux brought up the idea of when he wanted to refute the is-ought thing. He said, well, if you say you can't get an is from an ought, well, therefore you ought not derive an ought from an is. And therefore, it's a self-refuting proposition because in it, there is an ought with the statement you cannot get an ought from an is. Mo Rebuttal says, so wait, if there was a charity to help Christians and you liked the idea and wanted to help and they were the only one, but then you find out that the loudest voice was Mormons, would you cut ties? If the loudest voice was Mormon, so if it was like in charge of Mormons, I would not want to fund like a Mormon mission because I don't consider them Christians and I don't think you do either. So when you say there was a charity to help Christians, so I guess in this scenario, it's Mormons. It's the only charity, and they're Mormons, and they would help Christians. I mean, in the way that most charities and business models work. If that was the only one, yeah, I probably wouldn't do it. If those and here's the thing too, Mormons are historically racist because they didn't believe that black people could be saved until like 1974, or at least that's how it says from the musical, which is probably true. If those World War II vets saw the outcome,
they believed that the black race was descended of Cain.
Right. So almost tomato there. If those World War II vets saw the outcome of siding with the Allies, I wonder how many would have defected to the Axis. Oh, whatever. His beef with the founding of America might be that it's based on libertarian ideas. Yeah, I'm sure he has many types of beefs, and I was willing to give that sort of, I'll call it charitable olive branch for this. Because, yeah, we would all have wanted to found... We all have wanted to found the nation a little bit differently, but I think the way they put it together is pretty spiffy considering the days and times. All right. Few more minutes here.
We mentioned the founding and some of the founding fathers. I was ordered, I guess Thomas Accord put the encyclopedia together. Who is My Neighbor? If somebody wants to go get it, go check it out for sure. I was looking through that, look at some of Alexander Hamilton's quotes, Washington, Jefferson.
Okay. Who is my neighbor is what the Pharisees said. The lawyer, rather, not the Pharisees, but the lawyer to Christ. Jesus says to love your neighbor. So the lawyer wants to parse with Jesus and say, well, who is my neighbor? So what does Jesus say in that context? He splits them between, well, there was a man who was on the roadside and he was beaten, and the priest stepped by, and then the Levite stepped by. How does that go? Where is the passage of the reference for the Good Samaritan? Here we go. Luke 10.
Gospel of Luke, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's Luke 10, verses 25 through 37. And he goes, and behold, a certain lawyer stood up tempting him, being Jesus, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said unto him, what is written in the law? How readest thou? And he answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And he, Jesus, said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus, answering, said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went into him, and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these 3, thinkest thou, was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he, the lawyer, said, He that showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said unto him, Go and do thou likewise. So, anyway, if you're gonna cite a paper that says "Who is my neighbor," then obviously you're not on the Christian side of anything. So, Mo Rebuttal says, "No, just the loudest voice."
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. When I say the loudest voice, that's shorthand for who's really in charge of the Christian nationalist movement, who is getting most of the attention, who's getting most of the momentum in there. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of Christian nationalists who are at least in charge of the movement that aren't pushing some kind of ethno-state thing. And I would rather, if you're going to have Christian nationalism, have a separate camp that's trying to crowd out the ethno-statists. So, mic drop moment, says the Chipingro.
Yep, I totally agree.
a lot of the founding fathers, I mean, they all agreed with the position that we are espousing here.
And especially if Mormonism gets the loudest voice, they would lead people to hell anyway, because they'd be worshiping Jesus, fictional Jesus, that is the brother of Satan and is not God. So yeah, I still wouldn't want to fund them, because that would get back to the temple anyway.
And so what we have is these people that want to tout themselves as conservatives, but they are liberals. They are, or they like to refer to themselves as classical liberals, as someone like Ben Shapiro identifies. And that's what they are. They are liberals, yet they deny the founders. They deny the ideas of the founders and then say, you must hold this idea to be American. Well, this idea is only a piece of paper at this point.
And conveniently, those ideals exclude men like you and me, who have America in our blood, literally.
For sure.
And who have a personal interest in defending that for ourselves and our posterity. It's a way to completely destroy America as it has always been defined.
Well, yeah. And there's a, you mentioned blood. There's soil that comes with that.
Yes, there is.
And so as soon as you mention blood and soil, you're then a Nazi, right? It's so scary. It's a scary word.
Just call it people in place, and then it sounds nice.
I don't care anymore.
Blood and soil, it's a good phrase, and it
carries.
Common sense.
Carries. My grandfathers and his grandfather all fought for this country. I fought for this country. Right? This is a thing that we carried. We built this country. We carried this country. And so I will stand on blood and soil if I have to. And I'm just, I guess the question I could pose to you is, we talk about Christian nationalism. We talk about fascism. We talk about blood and soil. What's your position on these labels as we go forward? Do you think that we should accept them as they are? Because I know Stephen Wolfe is fine with people saying Christian nationalists, but that carries a connotation for normal people that hear it from these liberal types of that just means Nazi.
I'm glad he differentiated himself from normal people, but we're gonna address some chat real quick here. Sport Brand says, libertarianism today didn't exist when America was founded, if at all. Post-1950s libertarianism is based on Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard, rather. Classical liberalism isn't the liberalism of today. That's very, very true. Didn't really exist. Darth is talking about, I'm just glad we got rid of the oxymoron of Christian nationalism. Even Andrew Wilson has been shamed out of that position. Now he calls himself Christian populist. Are you sure about that? Because Rob Knorr just yesterday had a debate Christian nationalism versus secular ethics in government or something like that on Modern Day Debate. So I think the name still is being brandished. The plastic fangs have been taken off. Chipingo says, hold on. I wonder if he knows where Jefferson got the line, life, liberty, and pursuit. Did he perhaps take it and modify that from someone else? Chipingo, you're going to have to, you're jogging me a little bit here. You're going to have to fill me in on that. People like this are going to have to choose my way, RF, Jesus, and I rather have them made fun of as ignorant allies. I don't know what he meant by that. All right, Rev, your turn.
Well, I don't know. I can't get past these two guys over here. Their ideologies really, really backwards. They call themselves Christians and they try to dress up their ideology with Christianese, and I think they used maybe one verse and one concept from scripture to support this entire ideology that they've built, and it's not even a really good ideology. It's one that glorifies the flesh, and even the apostle said, "No flesh shall glory in his presence." So I don't see what they're trying to get at here. If these men claim to be godly men, they claim to live the Christian life, well, I'm not seeing the fruits of it at all. So it's kind of they're putting themselves in a very particular place. But yeah, I don't see anything that remotely resembles what I would consider Christianity, or even what the apostles would have considered Christianity. This is a perversion of it. But
exactly, and that's why, you know, our first and we don't have to harp on it, but I definitely wanted to get to this video at some point. But our first video, Rev and Rev and Reacts or whatever, we covered a young guy. I forgot what his name was, but he's a famous young evangelical teenage interviewer guy, and he recently did Kenneth Copeland interview as well. But he went to a KKK church and talked to him. That was our first episode. Is I wanted to combat this idea that you can be Christian and be a race-based idealist at the same time. And I think we've covered a lot of ground. We're about like over halfway through this nonsense interview, anyhow. But I think we're going to wrap it up because it's getting later at night. Rev Russ, do you have any thoughts for us as we come to the end of the night? Because I think I've made myself pretty clear.
yeah, like I said, this kind of ideology to where you're glorifying the flesh and trying to justify bad behavior because of your flesh, this isn't a Christian doctrine at all. So I'm going to give us a couple verses here. Let's go.
Sure. Oh my.
So we're going to go to Romans 8, and we're going to start it right off at the top. There is therefore no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is an enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So they that are in the flesh cannot please God. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If so be that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of this. So you see, we can't be carnal. Carnal-minded is enmity against God. To say that you're racially superior to somebody else because of the color of your skin, that's carnal. That's carnally minded. And that is death. But the spiritual mind is life and peace. That means we focus on the inward man. God told Samuel, I look not at the outward appearance of man, but I look on their heart. Men look on the outward appearance. We're supposed to model ourselves like Christ. And in doing so, we don't look at the outward appearance of men. We look at the inner man, what they bring to the table, what they offer, the fruits that they bear. And that's where this doctrine of Christian nationalism falls apart, especially the racist side of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that leads me to Galatians 3:26-29. For you are all the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you as been baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you be Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. We're given a new identity in Christ. And that identity does not include our racial identity that we were born with. It's a whole new one.
That is true. That is true. So I think we can close out on that, but I think maybe I'll add one more verse because I think it's worth it knowing that our belonging, if we are Christians, is on a spiritual level, and it's not on a physical genetic level. It's not even necessarily on a familial level. Because as you said, Rev Russ, Christ is going to bring a sword. He's going to divide people. He's going to divide people within their family, parents and spouses and children and all the above. And so I'm going to pull a Rev Russ for the end of the night, because I know that you usually do the verses. And I really love what you just said here, especially with Galatians. But I'm going to quote this verse from Matthew. Oh, wrong. Maybe I do it this way. Is it this? Yes. All right. I'm going to quote this verse from Matthew chapter 12, starting at verse 46. While he yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. But he answered and said unto them, Who is my mother? Who are my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand towards his disciples. Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mothers. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bid you adieu. Thank you for watching the show. Maybe next week we will cover the debate that happened recently on The Christian King on whether or not a true Christian can worship Satan. Yes, that debate actually happened.